We'll bring the meeting to order. Is there any changes or adjustments to the agenda aside from the addition of a request for our last May meeting's minutes to be altered?
I do have one correction.
Okay.
Both items 10 and 13 on our agenda are updates on the East Johnson sewer transfer.
Oh,
We do not have two distinct updates to cover, so,
we can cross out 13
yeah.
No, 11.
or 11? Just kidding. Any other changes or additions to the agenda?
I want to talk about potential of power washing the Holcomb House.
Okay.
They've got some quotes and just maybe a brief update on the merger study status update.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you for that.
The merger. Anything else?
You're still talking about the agenda?
Yes.
I'd like to talk about possibly having two meetings for the select board a month, like the first Monday and the third
Okay.
Monday of every month.
Any other items? Seeing none. Is the board prepared to approve the meeting minutes for December 17th, January 7th, and January 14th?
Eric, on the seventh meeting last month, the last meeting, when we increased the size of the broadband committee,
Yes.
it was my understanding or misunderstanding that it was 5 plus myself and Rob. But the minutes state it's 5, including Rob and myself. So,
Okay, that's on the 14th, or the 17th, December?
7th, January
Last
7th
week.
meeting.
Oh, January 7th, okay.
The minutes say 5, including.
Does anyone else have any different recollection?
I guess my understanding, well, obviously my understanding was what I put in the minutes, but I might have misunderstood.
That's what I thought it was,
Which?
5 total.
Total 5.
Mr. Chairman, I was not here on July 7th, so I will just abstain.
January 7th.
Yeah, January, did I say January 7th?
No, you said July. That's wishful thinking.
Oh, I guess it is. January 7th. then.
Dreaming of them.
Let it reflect January 7th, and the board can continue to vote because you'll have enough votes to carry it anyway.
The meetings from the 14th we just got today, so I haven't had a chance to look them over as that we put those off to another meeting.
Okay. So, are you prepared to make a motion for any of them?
I'd move to approve the 17th and, oh, actually, we had a change on the 17th regarding Frank Eldred.
Oh, yeah, I think I already changed that since it was just a clear mistake. I went ahead and put the new.
So as long as that change is in here, I'll move to approve the 17th and this January 7th meeting minutes.
Got a motion on the 17th and 7th. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Abstain for my reason.
And so noted, Mike abstained. And then we'll have to bring back the 17th again next month. for approval. Rosemary, you got the floor.
Okay, budget status report. To date, we're at 49.88% of budget. And we have received our third installment for state aid to highway money. And we've received the grant money for the detours for the construction project last summer. That was $876. have a list of delinquent taxpayers, and we have sent this out to the attorneys for collection. I told Diane to do the same as last year on mobile homes. It's over $600 and somebody's living there, to send that for collection.
Okay.
And there's a rumor going around on the fifth one down that they are not going to redeem their trailer from last year. But that was early summer that tax sale happened.
And the town bid on it last year?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Current taxes. To date, we're at 57.86% total collected for the 4 installments, which is slightly less than the past couple of years. And the school district is having a Australian ballot on February 19th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Does the town want to send a bill to the school district for those costs?
And there's nothing that, there was nothing for us that we
Right.
needed.
This is to allow Cambridge into the school district.
So it's all a school issue.
Yes.
What's the board's pleasure?
What are our costs?
We're going to have BCA members at polls for 12 hours.
And probably send them up to count the ballots. We don't have to do any posting or anything, right?
No, it doesn't.
So what's, any idea of the dollar number?
Probably a couple $100.
Seems like the fair thing to do. Are other towns doing that?
I don't know, I haven't asked around yet.
Have we ever been in this situation?
Nope. Never had a unified school district. Or when we used to have our own school district, of course, it was our own voters, so.
No way out of it, is there?
We'll send a bill to the
Can't get out of
school.
it, no.
No. Yeah, we have to supply the JPs.
Yeah, I know. What's the issue? If we have to do it, we have to do it.
So the issue is, does the board wish to send the bill to the school?
I don't think so.
Is that the opinion of the board? Lacking a motion to do so.
Well, any way you look at it, we're still gonna pay. Whether we give them a bill, that'll be reflected in their bill to the townspeople by a small percentage, naturally, so. You know, it's potatoes, potatoes, tomatoes, tomatoes. Forget it.
Okay, I don't see an appetite.
That's all that I had.
Anybody got any questions for Rosemary? Going once, going twice? Brian, you got the floor.
In our report, we haven't really been doing much other than snow removal and plowing.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Who did it?
I do have a breakdown of where we are as far as for salt and sand. The first one there, salt. I've purchased 500 ton already this year. We probably have 100 ton in our salt shed. That's what our budget was based on, 500 ton, because that's an average. But what we didn't figure on was they raised the price per ton by $11.62. So even if we didn't have a bad November, and I could keep it in that 500 ton, we'd still be over $5,800. So if the the weather continues the way it is, we're going to be over probably more than that.
is that how you purchase it, is in 500 ton bulk rate, or is it?
It's a bulk rate, yeah. You let me know how much you're gonna purchase, and they give you that price based on what you add, at the end of what you purchase, which is 500 ton. And you get that rate.
So if Rob, Peter, Kate, Paul here, if we have to order 500 ton before we get out of this winter, we'll have some amount left over for next year.
I'm not sure I followed you.
Do you have to order an additional 500 ton? Are those, or can you order smaller increments?
No. We can order whatever we want
Okay,
on that price. Once that price is set, you can order more.
okay, so we can order to fill what we need for the current year.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's not a problem. So sand, we've used roughly 3,500 yards. We've gone out 69 times. That's roughly 75% of what our average year is. So I could see us, depending on the rest of the winter, I could see us going over there as well and needing to purchase. I put down there, possibly another 1,500 yards, just 14 grand. I don't see us go, I don't see it being that bad, but I don't know. And then overtime wise, there's a range, most of the guys, well, all the guys are between 150 and 180. And this winter we've been, when we can, when we come in early, we work our 8 and go home, trying to save it that way. We don't have a full crew on the weekends, so we're saving a little that way. We're trying to save it, wherever we can. But November was extremely hard on us. That and the warm temperatures in November and December and the rain, and it seems like the storms come on the weekends, and like yesterday, you gotta work all day long on the weekend. So I don't know that I'm gonna be able to keep it under the 250-hour budget that we had talked about. Just depends on the rest of the winter.
Understood.
And I'm doing what I can to save overtime.
Yeah.
Anybody got any questions for Brian?
There had been some talk that maybe you would want to know some information on saving for mud abatement this year. I talked to Brian about maybe that might be one area we could cut some money out of. I would like to try a couple different methods from what the typical mud abatement is. Typically, we've been doing a full road reconstruction. I don't know that that's always necessary in some of the spots that are needed. I think, and there's an example on French Road that they did years ago that's still holding up, where you do like half a reconstruction. You take off the top foot or so and just lay fabric down, and then import some good gravel from NATO's and do it that way, and that's holding up well. And there's several spots around where it seems like the major issue is just the water's trapped, like between ledge and the road. And I think you put some under drains in there and just get the water out of there, I think that solves a good chunk of your problem. So that would be one way. I'd like to try it kind of regardless whether we cut that particular budget or not. I'd like to try it just so moving forward we have more options than just a complete reconstruction.
So basically, if we can get the same bang at a less of a buck, then yeah, it seems like it makes sense to at least try it and see if it works.
Yeah, I think so.
And you had, by doing this, you felt you could cut how much from that line item?
What did we talk about, Brian? 15?
I think it was 15 from mud abatement specifically.
Yes.
In the current year you're talking about?
The upcoming year.
of the next year?
If there's some time, depending, weather permitting, if there's some time before the end of the year, we'll implement those strategies this year. And that can help our bottom line in terms of cash on hand at the end of the year. But this is mostly a strategy for the next year, for the upcoming fiscal year, because there's no good guarantee that we'll have weather conditions suitable before July 1st.
Well, we're also looking for, I mean, if our winter road budget is over by 20,000,
We
we're
may be
looking for money in the current fiscal
looking
year.
for places
Yeah.
to cut. Well, that seems to make sense to at least explore it.
Yeah, I feel I think we'll see savings.
And we're gonna start seeing a diminishing return on the investment, because the ones that we did first were the worst case,
Yes.
mud holes that we had in town. So the investment into that and the return that we saw was pretty significant. As we get more and more of the worst ones done, we're working on the, the second tier of mud issues, so.
I don't think we're quite there yet, but
No.
yes, I understand what you're
We
saying.
still got a few left.
It's not like it's money in our pocket when we, when our citizens have less trouble getting home, you
Yeah.
know? They might appreciate just getting home.
Any other questions for Brian?
Thanks for all the extra overtime
Thanks.
for.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
And your crew as well.
Thank you for thinking outside the box.
Yes.
You're welcome. Is there anything else that you guys need me for?
No, you probably
No, we
need to
need
get
to-
sleep.
You sure you're gonna come
Brian,
early?
just so you know, there's a 700-pound moose on Clark Avenue hanging out right near the road. So just,
We saw him
Right.
at Parker and Stearns last week.
okay, well, it's migrated up Clark Avenue, so
Yeah, cool.
just so you
Started up
know.
by my house. It started up by my house.
It did, yeah, we were wondering
Yeah.
where it
Yeah,
started.
that's where it
Okay.
started.
Cool.
What is it?
Just trying to-
700-pound moose.
Just saying they do eat good.
If you have time tomorrow, stop by the office.
Okay.
But nothing serious.
Do we have any planning commission report?
Charles, can you report to the planning commission?
No, I can't.
Okay.
We have a chairman and a vice chairman, and nobody told me to do it. I do have a question on the LCPC.
On what?
LCPC,
Yeah.
is that now or is that some other time?
If it's something to do with the planning commission,
No, it's more to do with broadband.
we do have that on your agenda, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
First time.
Next one.
Okay, did you give Cal a time to come in?
For 7:30.
7:30, okay, so we'll skip over that, come back to it. First item on your report is the broadband service committees.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
So, Rob and we were hoping it was 7 members. And the reason for that is then we can have subcommittees of 3 that can actually do work. And then when we're all together, we can do what needs to be done. But we think that 3 people working independently without the constraints of what we do would be more effective. That's one item. The other item, we have 4 candidates.
Yeah, 4 candidates
Because
now.
one of them, we had 5, one of them sort of withdrew, but just wants to recommend other people. So my feeling is we should not appoint them at this time. That we should look for more members and vet them, at least talk to them. The only one I've really talked to is Will, and he's withdrawn. And the final item is who on LCPC is our point person in terms of obtaining grants? Because it doesn't look like we have a grant writer applying for the committee. And, LCPC has $1 million budget. I'm sure they can find someone there that instead of spending all the time on river corridors, could spend some time on something we really want.
Yep.
Who would that be?
Call up their executive director, they'll assign somebody.
What is it?
Tasha,
Tasha.
Tasha Laws?
yeah.
Okay.
Is that,
And
no,
ask her.
would Duncan, he's our rep on the
Yeah.
board. Would he
Duncan.
be-
Duncan could probably help you with that.
So I got.
Which does bring up the question of, as I understood it, the board made a committee of 5. We've got 2 that we appointed already. There's 4 applicants. Well, we thought we had 5, but now we got 4. Do we want to increase the committee size? We just arbitrarily picked the number 5, I think. I don't think that was,
We have 4 good applicants too.
yes.
So,
Who were the applicants?
It's Una Lee, Robin Story,
Brian Cohen, Barry Cohen.
Barry Cohen.
Barry Cohen.
Barry Cohen and Charlotte Reaver.
Thank you.
I certainly know Charlotte, I know Robin, I know Barry. Who was the 4th one?
Una Lee.
Who's probably the most qualified. She builds these things. She
Yes,
builds
that's
this.
right. So,
But she may not want to do it full time, you know, she may just want to consult for us, which would be wonderful.
You know,
Until we talk to her, we don't know.
She's interested in helping, but she has some professional time issues with this. So we absolutely want to make the most use of her we can, but we also have to be respectful of her time.
So Rob and I are talking to different people at different times.
Who's, you know, I know I was a strong proponent for 5, but that's just because I thought that was a good working group. If you're thinking of subcommittees, and that would be the primary group, I'm not tied to that. I'm not tied to 5, you know, members.
My only hesitation going with 7 is that you're gonna get a quorum when you need one, and that we're gonna have the slots, we're gonna have the people available.
I'm sorry, the first part?
My hesitation with going to 5 is that you have, excuse me, thank you. 7 is that you have a quorum when you need it, and that there are enough qualified people that are gonna participate to fill all 7 slots.
Well, I don't, getting qualified people does not seem to be a problem.
Good.
The only problem, let me back up on that. We have a concentration in one area. All the applicants that we deem qualified, except for me, have an IT background, or are involved in IT, and I'm not. And it's on this side of IT. In other words, assuming that what we want to build is on the other side of the wall that you plug into, all the people we're getting, and I don't really know what Barry's experience is. And except for Ona, all the other people we're getting are people that plug in to what we want to provide. So it's ultimate, it's end user participation, knowledgeable end users. But how do we build what's on the other side of the wall? We don't have people with that kind of experience that I'm aware of. And those are people I'm trying to find. The grant writers, I don't want to beat it up, but those people. That's the second part of your question. First part is getting quorum. We'll figure that out. We'll get quorums.
So bringing it back, does the board have interest in increasing the size? Going back out, trying to solicit more interest?
How much time do we want to spend on finding more, you know, like what? Should we put a,
What did you
Timeline on
do to this
this?
point? Some front porch forum?
I just used Front Porch Forum.
Uh-huh.
I got a good number of applicants, and the town website. But
Well, if you wanna vet people, Charles, do you wanna have a meeting with all the people that are interested so far, and?
I think probably it's easier doing one-on-one. I know Will, so I emailed with him and he backed out.
Don't email the rest.
Huh?
Don't email the rest. Let Rob do it. Yeah, let Rob do it.
Good point. Charlotte's my neighbor. I had intended to go see her yesterday, but
She's really involved in IT at the studio
yeah,
center,
right.
and they have a real need for this, so.
Well,
Great.
plus her husband, I think, uses IT out of the house and,
Father,
huh?
her father.
I didn't think she was married, but yeah.
Wait a minute. Oh, she is? Who's the wife?
Alexa.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I don't know Charlotte then.
She,
Charlotte's young.
her dad is Steve,
Yeah.
the one I really know. Steve is,
She's not still in college? Her daughter? Okay.
She's at the studio center full-time. So it sounds like you want to take a month and
Yeah,
get up some interest.
plus, in the meantime, I want to find out what other people are doing too. You know, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Craftsbury's looked at it. EC Fiber's already done it, and they've got a whole bunch of towns. Can we get involved with them somehow?
Wow.
In which case, we don't need a committee, because they'll just do it. But,
Okay.
so I personally, neither Rob nor I are ready to recommend anybody to be appointed.
So we want to table this till next month?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Is Mark going to be here for the town clock discussion?
He had planned on it. With the weather conditions and everything,
He doesn't know what time it is because it's hot.
yeah.
So the clock's not working. We had put Cal on for 7:30, so if you want to keep going through your report.
Let me do a quick update then with the Evergreen Ledge. So you've got a copy of email I had with David Rupp from our attorney's office. So I've gone back and forth with them a little bit about kind of the best way for us to take ownership of Evergreen Ledge. We did find deeds for both sections, and it is entirely owned by the Evergreen Ledge Cemetery Association. So we will have to take some kind of action in order to take it over and have it rightfully ours. Their recommended course of action is a quiet title. You know, they give a few details here, and they also give us a cost estimate of how much they think that this will cost, start to finish. And it fairly expensive. They're estimating a $7,500 cost for us to take over the cemetery.
It's too bad we didn't use our other attorneys on this. They were a lot cheaper. I can't believe a quiet title is gonna cost $7,500. That's expensive.
Do you know what the theory that they're quieting title, why the town would become the owner?
I'm not well versed enough, I think, to try and, I would be afraid of misstating their reasoning if I got a little too into the weeds. They have offered to come and present to the board directly if we have questions, and we'd like them to appear.
Do we think there'd be value in that before we get the checkbook out for $7,500? Having the attorneys come before a special meeting, and then we all can hear the same thing with the same questions at the same time? Obviously, that'll cost us some money, but
Yeah.
it might be money well spent too.
I think that all you need to know is what their theory is, you know, and then it's a value judgment on our part whether or not we want to spend the money to do this, or do we let it lie fallow? To me, that's the question. I was just curious what you know, what they would assert is why title ought to pass to us. And, you know, I assume they have a basis that would pass the straight face test in front of a court, because you're going to be dealing with a default hearing, most likely. I think that it's the value judgment question, you know. I'd like to just understand it and then move on, and I'm sure they have a rationale. I don't think we need them there to tell us what that is.
I agree with Doug, we don't need to get them here, because they're gonna start their time as soon as they get in their car, as soon as they get home.
But we also are paying for all the time that Brian is playing middleman, asking him a question, and then he brings it back, and then we have more follow-up questions, so he has to run back again.
I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, but I still think it'd be cheaper that way than it would be to haul them all in here and ask them a bunch of questions.
Well, what's the board's pleasure? Do you want to just send Brian back with the inquiry as to Doug's question?
I could help Brian with the question.
That would be,
Let's do it that way, yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
I discussed with them briefly a couple other scenarios, and that this is their recommendation, but, yeah, I think getting a little,
Okay, let's do
if
that.
we can ask a couple pointed questions, it might be helpful.
Okay, Cal, we've all had the opportunity to do what you snapshotted out of their May meeting. By state statutes, we have to keep meeting minutes, that a minimum of who was there, the time of the meeting, any action that was taken by the board, those sort of things. We intentionally do not normally record in the meeting minutes the verbatim type of meeting minutes, because every meeting would be like a novel. Donna does a really good job of just getting out the gist of what the conversations were that led up to whatever action you may or may not have taken. So I guess what I'm looking for from you is to convince the board on why this section that you pulled out of a meeting last May is something that we should consider verbatim.
So everyone's looked at the excerpt?
I hope so. It was sent to everyone.
Cal, is there any way you could sit up front, because I'm hard of hearing, and I've only got one hearing aid in, and I'm deaf in the other ear, and it doesn't work, so.
I guess, I consider it to be noteworthy, to me, and again, people can say whatever they want, but I guess the public espousal, of a tiered version of the First Amendment struck me as pretty unconstitutional. And I was actually surprised that no one else, I wasn't at that meeting. I saw it on the GMATV. I think that, again, people can say whatever they want, but as you're speaking from a official position, and you went on about a tiered First Amendment where you put veterans, combat veterans, above everyone else, that struck me as unconstitutional. And, to that end, I hope I'm not the only one that feels this way, it struck me as pretty biased. And how could someone, we all have biases, but to espouse that from a official place to your constituents, and not be questioned about that, and to me, it marginalizes 95% of the population when you put it that way. To me, it questions, your suitability as being a fair arbiter. If I'm sitting here next to a veteran, clearly there's going to be a bias. I'm a non-vet. And it just struck me, and I'm surprised actually that it didn't make the notes, because I think it's very noteworthy. And at the very least, I think someone should check you on that, your peers, preferably. I kind of resent being put in this position right now. I figured it's pretty blatant. And again, this isn't about rights to free speech. Say whatever you want, anywhere you want. I like to think that you guys are held to a little bit of a higher standard, even in the community, based on your position. And I don't know what kind of oath you take, but I would hope there's something in there about upholding the Constitution. And to me, that violates it. But again, you guys can speak to it better than I can. And I was actually looking for some support from the rest of you. If someone else sat up there and said, this segment of the population has more rights to free speech than this, that's at the very least concerning. At worst, it's supremacist thinking. It's putting you in a supreme position. So it's questionable. So that's why I'm here.
May I speak to this?
Yes, you may, Mike.
Well, I guess I'll start off that it wasn't picked up by the minutes, or it wasn't picked up by the newspaper that was here. They got basically the gist of it. And I'm going to tell you why I say it. I believe I earned freedom of speech because of being a veteran. And I'm sorry that you took me literally, okay? But I say this for the benefit of veterans. Has anybody here been in the military before? Do you think the military is a safe space for speech, freedom of speech?
No.
Can you say whatever you want to say?
No,
You can't say a word, Cal, in the military. And you get to be what is called, you've probably seen Shawshank Redemption, okay? Red talks about Brooks as being institutionalized, okay? I believe that military people, to a certain degree, are institutionalized because they don't speak up. And another thing, too, I wish that all Americans could see the places in the world that I have seen, okay? And you would have a different perspective of being an American, okay? And once you got home, you would say, man alive, I'm sure glad I'm an American. I'm sure glad I'm home. What a place to be, okay? I wish people could see that, then they would understand. Well, because veterans have been kind of, and I don't want to use the word beaten down, but they don't want to speak up, okay? When they get through their military service, they come home, they want to be left alone, and they don't say anything, okay? I've talked to a lot of veterans over the years. Oh, I'm sick of this, I'm sick of that, and they don't speak up, okay? So I tell them, I say, you're a veteran. You know, you've earned that right to freedom of speech. You need to speak up, okay? And I have said that to veterans before, and they speak up. Now, if they don't speak up, things will happen out of their control because they didn't speak up. So if I work loosely sometimes with some words, and I get somebody to listen so they will speak up, then I don't see where I've said anything wrong. I don't mean it literally, Cal, really. I don't mean it literally that I think I'm better than anybody else. I just say that for the benefit of veterans so they feel as if they can have a voice, and that's all.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to any of the board members. What is the board's pleasure? Do we want to put in the comments from last May into a meeting? We can't go back and change May meeting's minutes. We could only record them in this meeting as a verbatim.
I'd like to say, that May meeting, in that discussion that you bring up, it was, for me, a real case study on how to not conduct a public conversation on a really difficult subject. That I think there's a lot to be learned by that meeting. I think also, I mean, Mike says a lot of stuff during meetings that I don't necessarily agree with. I think that I say a lot of things in meetings that he doesn't necessarily agree with. I definitely believe that rights are equal for everyone, as it is under our Constitution, obviously. I think we were in that meeting until 11 o'clock that night, as we often are, and if I was to engage Mike in that conversation, in every conversation that I disagreed with him with, the meeting would have gone until 4 or 5 a.m. That nobody's rights were curtailed that night. We didn't take any action, which was curtailing anyone's rights, and if we did, I would certainly have objected to that. So that's where I'm coming from on that conversation. I think we need to do a better job of facilitating those conversations moving forward and spend less time kind of arguing about what we did 7 months ago.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I really appreciate when people from the public take the time to watch our meetings, read the notes, read the minutes, and I feel like we have our duties as a board, and there's responsibility on the public to keep us in check and call us out on things when they find it appropriate to do so. So thank you, Cal, for coming to us. I think that's an important thing. I also think that there's a time and a place for us to, voice our personal opinions on certain subjects, and I didn't call it out like Cal is now, but in retrospect, I do think that that was a really inappropriate comment to say, and that this is not the place to be making those comments. The military is something that you chose to go into. I've traveled all over the world and seen many things too, and try to broaden my perspective based on my experiences. So I think that it's an important thing to be noted in today's meeting about those minutes, or that meeting in May.
Trying to decide what to say. It seems to me that we are not held to a higher standard of discourse than other folks are held, that we have our opinions. I don't want people's opinions to be censored. They can be characterized, they can be discussed and held up to the light, but while Mike and I don't see eye to eye a lot of times, he has valuable contributions, and as often as I have valuable contributions, and the opinions, we take everything. So sometimes I worry about, I worry about political correctness, and I worry about, statements that are innocuous and pablum too. I worry about both sides of the spectrum in public discourse.
Jackie?
No, I was at that meeting, as you all know, and it was very difficult for a whole lot of reasons. Mike, as you made that speech.
You want to move up here so we can hear you?
Oh, sorry. As you made that speech from where I was sitting, and you described this tiered system of, and I did take you literally. I think rightfully so. You were very passionate and very direct in what you were saying, and I was listening. And when you describe this tiered system of, you have, this much rights, but then you have this much more, and then you have this much more, you excluded so many people, and myself included, and I really felt it. First of all, 9 out of 10 vets are male. So there's a gender bias on top of the other biases that you laid out. And I felt that. I also felt it because you made that speech after the neo-Nazis that you invited to this meeting self-identified as veterans. I don't know if that's true or not. I would take it with a huge grain of salt, considering they lied throughout that meeting.
Say that again.
I would take their veteran status with a grain of salt.
Okay.
It is in the notes, though, that they self-identify.
Yes. So after they say that, then you give this big speech about these tiered systems, and you're at the top of that pyramid, and then the neo-Nazis are right in the middle, and I'm at the bottom. And you serve all the people of this town.
I understand.
And just to go back to you inviting the neo-Nazis to the meeting, was that with your consent, Eric?
I was aware of it.
So were the other board members aware of it?
They probably were
That
not.
before the meeting, Mike took it upon himself to visit the neo-Nazis at their home?
You said in the minutes that it's not a neo-Nazis. They were not neo-Nazis.
I did not say that.
I thought it said that, somebody said they were not
Oh,
neo-Nazis.
they are
They
neo-Nazis.
probably said that.
They said they weren't Nazis.
Okay, I get a sense this conversation is
No,
gonna
I
go
know
south.
it's
pretty-
going nowhere. It's
I'm
going
getting a
nowhere,
sense
but,
this is gonna go south pretty quickly.
Please let me speak. Please let me speak. This is
Then
important.
wrap it
I've
up.
waited a long
We've
time.
been on this for a few
Okay,
minutes.
so I just wanted to get, Donna, I hope you have that in the minutes, that Mike, with Eric's consent, did go to the neo-Nazis' house before the meeting, after he...
I did not go to neo-Nazi's house. I went to some people's house that was on Railroad Street. There was no flag flying there the day that I went there. I just talked to them. And the deal is that there was going to be supposedly a safe space to talk about somebody in town. But basically what was going to happen, there were going to be people here blindsiding people in our town and not giving them the opportunity to defend themselves.
How did you know that was going to happen? Because
Okay,
you had-
enough back and forth. What is the board's pleasure on this? I don't think this is gonna go any
Let me-
further.
Say,
Yeah, and I do too.
Charlie, do you have anything that would add something different than what we've already heard on this?
Yes. That if it is your pleasure to record an entire film clip verbatim, include the whole thing, including Jackie's diatribe.
Oh, I'm open to that, sure.
Where some forms of speech are okay, but others aren't.
Well, Nazis are not okay, Joe.
Well,
Well, that's not according to the ACLU.
I guess I would look for a motion from a board member to keep this discussion going, or we're gonna move on.
Mr. Chairman, this happened in May of last year.
Are you
This
making a
is-
motion?
I make a motion, we move on.
That's not a motion. Is there a motion to fulfill this request that was made of the section of the meeting from May where Mike spoke, it be recorded verbatim?
What harm would it do?
I make that motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I think we're going down a kind of a slippery slope here.
So,
This was all discussed. Let's go back. The minutes of the Monday, May 21st, 2018 talks that what I said. Monday, June 18th, review and approve the minutes. The minutes were approved. We moved on. This was all on public access TV. People could go watch it.
But they won't.
Well, whatever, Jackie, I think that we've moved on. That was way back in May. It's just hard for me to believe that at this juncture of time, that this is being brought up. I
can
think it should have
understand why you
been,
wouldn't want it,
Okay,
but-
I think it should have been brought up in June, probably.
So the board as a whole embraces Mike's statement.
The board has not voted yet. There is a motion on the floor. There is a second. We're in discussion right now.
I'm asking if they embrace his statement,
Which statement?
his tiered, his hierarchical
I mean,
version of.
I think I've addressed that already myself.
I'm sorry.
I've spoken to that directly.
So
No,
Where-
we do not embrace.
Where I'm struggling is we're gonna take one part of a long discussion. It took a long amount of time on one night back in May, and we're gonna single out one person and verbatim record what they said. And I don't think that's fair to Mike or any other board member to have that put upon
I
them.
didn't hear anyone else say anything that violated.
There are things that are said every meeting by board members that anyone could come before us and make the same request that you are.
That violate the Constitution.
I would be, if we're in discussion,
Yes.
I'd be opposed to doing anything other than including the whole discussion, because I sat through that discussion, and there were many people here whose characterization of it I wasn't happy with. So I think if you want context, you need the whole thing. Because, and I've read enough depositions, and I don't think it'll sound like you think it's gonna sound like.
Well, watch the whole thing.
You know, so, is that possible to recreate that?
The whole meeting?
No.
No, the discussion on that agenda item.
Well, even just that whole discussion, it would probably take a pretty long time for me to go through it and record verbatim everything people said. I mean, it's certainly possible, but you'd be paying a lot for it. I wonder if it would make sense maybe just to include a link to the TV thing and say, you know, if you want to find out everything that was said at that meeting, go here and watch it. I don't know, but you guys.
Well, there's a certain number of people who, you know, a link to go watch something does nothing for me where I live.
Yeah.
So I would rather, and maybe because I'm a paper person, I would rather spend the money, have this of record, and I don't think it will stand for what people think it stands for.
I request just the excerpt that I sent. That is what I was.
Was that your motion and second?
That was my,
I would move to amend it to include the whole section.
That's my understanding of what we were doing, was the entire section of that.
The 3 minutes and
When you guys are
53
saying the
seconds.
entire section, I mean, that whole agenda item, the whole discussion?
That's, yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it makes sense to pull out one small part of the discussion that happened within the context of a meeting.
But that's conflicting with your motion maker.
Well, if you want,
But
I move to amend that.
So he's making a motion to amend, are you seconding the amendment?
yeah.
Okay.
So what's going on, Mr. Chairman?
There's a motion by Doug to amend where it would, the whole item that was in the agenda, the whole discussion, everybody that spoke that night on that topic would be verbatim recorded.
Well, all this is trying to accomplish is to try to paint me in a bad light.
No, it's just trying to reflect exactly what
Well,
you said.
the thing is that unfortunately, I probably misspoke. I could have got across my point without going as far as I did. Regretfully, I'm speaking this way. I resent the fact, though, that you're kind of calling me sympathetic to the neo-Nazis, which I am not.
I did not call you sympathetic to the
Okay, well, that's good. That's good that's on the record that you did not comment, because I am not sympathetic toward neo-Nazis. I believe that everybody in America has a right
We heard you.
to defend themselves, okay? Now, this isn't a court of law, but this is not a court of law, but it is a court of public opinion. So I do believe that anybody that is going to be talked about in a public meeting should be there to defend themselves. You see what I mean?
My question is, can Mike legitimately be trusted to be a fair arbiter after knowing this, that you have a hierarchical position on the First Amendment? Where does that end? You're the one, excuse me, but you're the one who purports to defend the Constitution.
I support what?
You defend the Constitution.
Oh, sure I do.
Okay, but
100%.
But here you have the irony, you have a hierarchical version of First Amendment.
But I said I did it as
You
a...
said you really believe. I really believe.
But I always kind of preface that to make a point to other veterans. And as I said before, I try to speak to other veterans to get them to speak up. And if it makes them feel a little bit better about themselves, so they do want to speak up, then so be it.
And so,
But I don't believe in a hierarchy.
Okay,
That's what you said. That's why I'm bringing
this
it up.
conversation is not going anywhere from where it was before, we're just going in circles.
Like I said, I resent being here. I'm surprised and disappointed that you all haven't held your peer accountable. I'm sorry.
Well-
So now we can expect
He
that
is
Mike's
a
involved in
duly
an
elected,
arbitration, that he's going to go in with a bias because he said it.
Mike is a duly elected official We cannot hold him accountable. He has the same rights as any one of the rest of us to say what we believe. And,
Is there an
and we cannot hold him accountable. You, the voters, hold him accountable. We
And
do
that's
not.
why I think Cal is here. He's holding accountability, and that's what this discussion is about, I believe, Eric.
If another elected official, like a governor, or the lieutenant governor, or a senator, or a house rep, described this tiered system in a public setting in a formal public setting, well, what happened then?
Actually, as I understand it, elected officials, when they're operating within their official capacity, and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, when you're on the floor, you're immune from things that you say. Is that basically correct?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
From civil liability.
You can,
Well, there's strict rules about what you can say.
right.
Yeah, you're not immune. You're not.
But you could have said something similar to what Mike had said, and
Yes.
it's acceptable.
Yep.
No repercussions.
I'm not looking to sue.
No.
I'm just- I feel like this is an accountability issue and a credibility issue, Mike. That's all.
But Cal, you probably think because I said those things that I would treat you different had you come
Yes.
before the board. That is not true.
Well, I watched you treat me different.
How did I treat you different,
You didn't
Jack?
come to my house.
This is getting into it. He said, he should.
No.
Yes, it is. I want to get this, I want to bring this, the chair is taking the meeting back.
Okay, Chair.
That
I
was
want to
done.
bring this to a vote. There is an amendment on the floor. Is there any more discussion with the amendment?
I want to know, Cal, do you feel comfortable with that amendment? To have the whole thing
I came here
included?
looking for that to be, the segment that I sent you all to be included in the notes. If you guys want to do something beyond that, that's up to you. To me, the important part is Mike's speech. And it's important because it shows a bias. Again, I've said all I can say about that.
Any more comments?
And so the board embraces Mike's statement is what I gather.
The board has not voted yet.
The board does not embrace my statement.
Well, I didn't hear anyone correct you on it.
Are you prepared to vote, really?
I didn't hear anyone correct him when he made that statement.
All those in favor of the amendment as Doug presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
So
And the
how-
chair, it was 2 ayes, 2 noes, chair votes nay. The amendment fails. Now we're back to the original motion of Kyle, is including the segment that Cal forwarded to all of us. Is there any more discussion?
I think it's unfair to include just a portion of something, so I won't know.
So noted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
so
Motion
how-
fails.
So how many yeses and nos were there?
There was 1 for and 3 against, and the chair votes against. Next item, the town clock.
I knew I'd come late. I have been wrestling with the clock for a few months now. And I've got some people that have helped me, we've looked at it. I basically think that the last time it was gone through and refurbished was 1990. And what's happening is just the drive, as far as I can tell right now, the drive shaft, as it goes, as it leaves the clock base, is degrading and falling down on
Big
it,
go.
falling down on the drive gear. And I think I will try and get, Steve Engel knows the person who does this, and I want to talk to there's 2 other clocks like this right in the area. There's one in Morrisville, one in Waterville. See if I can figure out a way to get a new drive shaft machined. So that basically the drive shaft sits in a cast iron slot. I oil it. That drive shaft spins 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's slowly ground itself down. So it's slipped down, and it's slowing the clock down, and it's not keeping time. And and I can adjust the clock to go faster by shortening the pendulum, and I've fooled around with that, and I've done a lot of work on it the last few months to finally get it to where I think that's the problem. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm gonna reach out and see what it'll cost to get a new drive shaft. It's a piece of rod that's like this big, the size of your finger, with just a small bushing on the end. I think that it'll be a minimal amount of money if that's really the issue. But that's what's been going on for the last few months. Usually in the fall, the whole tower shifts, and I have troubles with the gears binding at the top, because I got about 12, 15 feet of drive shaft that has to be within a 1/16 of an inch when it reaches those transverse gears up there. And if that moves a little bit, it either binds it up or it skips, transferring to the clock faces. And the masons led me to believe they were going to fix the front of the towers. They're going to stabilize the base last year, and maybe they're going to do it this coming year. But that would help in the spring and the fall, because as the frost leaves, like I say, I've got about a 1/16 of an inch over the length, most of the height of that tower to keep it running. And so that's all. And I will come back when I get an estimate on what it'll cost and get some other advice to make sure I'm correct. But that seems, I've worked my way through a lot of problems to narrow it down to this.
There is a machine shop in Morrisville that
They could probably do that.
they do custom work.
Yeah,
Pretty
I know
good work.
that. LWI.
Yeah.
Talk to
Yeah.
Kevin Stars.
Yeah, no, I know Kevin very well, he's my neighbor. Yeah, it'll just be a matter, I want to have somebody from Waterville or Morrisville come and walk through it with me. Brad Reed is not answering his phone anymore.
Really?
I don't know whether he's alive still or not, but the phone rings, says this is Brad, and then it goes to message box is full.
Oh, no.
You know where he lives?
In Barry somewhere, didn't?
No, he lives on 100 between Waterbury and Stowe. Right, I can tell you sometime,
You should
but,
tell me sometime. I heard it was pretty rustic living.
yes, I would say that.
It was rustic living when you lived here.
We're in our budget. If you think that there's gonna be any significant cost for this.
At the moment, I would think it's less than a few $100.
Okay.
And how much?
A few
Less than a few
$100.
hundred.
Okay.
Couple, $300. I mean, if I'm correct, it's a half-inch piece of iron with a bushing on one end that just needs to be remilled. So, that's all. I feel bad because I spent a lot of time trying to make it have the correct time. And, there are other things. When we get a wind and ice, it'll slow. All it has to do is slow the hands turning, get some build up there, and then it'll shut the clock down. But that's normal. That just happens. We get icy, snowy wind on this face here usually, and it just slows the whole thing down. But
I don't mind making a contribution to your right of my own pocket, Mark.
yeah, well, I just wanted to let you know because I've been wrestling with it for a while, and I was in the office talking to Brian the other day and Eric the other night.
We've got a healthy amount set aside for clock maintenance, so.
Good,
What you've outlined to me, I think we can afford.
good. That's all.
Thank you for that job too, maintaining it.
Oh, yeah. Must be chilly up there, isn't it?
It's
Prestige.
it's a very neat thing. I'm proud to do it. Somebody's been doing it for a long time.
Yep.
You know, Eric, if you look up there, you can see people's names that go back to certainly back to the 40s, people that we know growing up there, guys. It's pretty neat.
Okay, just let us know.
I will.
Have you trained anybody to pass the baton to?
No, I haven't, and I have thought about that. Every now and again when I go on vacation, anybody can wind it. You just go up there and crank it back half a crank and then go forward. That's not the issue. The real issue is there's just less and less people out in the world that are dealing with old clocks. I mean, if you wanted a career fixing clocks, you could have one now because nobody's doing it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
You better look and get somebody trained for that, Mark, in case you keel over someday.
Our conflict of interest policy?
Stay warm, guys.
Yeah, you too.
The road crew has been working hard.
We're gonna try to get out of here.
So we've got the draft conflict of interest policy. This is, 99% the VLCT model conflict of interest policy. We had, our major change was Article 13 for modifications, that we committed ourselves to providing notice to the Village of Johnson to any modifications we were going to make to the conflict of interest policy, and they had agreed to do the same.
Okay. That was the only change of substance that we had?
Yeah.
Have they passed their conflict of interest policy?
No. They're in the same boat we are, that the state said that we were going to be required to have a conflict of interest policy in place before July 1st of this year.
Right,
So,
they will soon.
we took our first look at it, made the minor changes, and we have to get back on it now.
Would this be a subject for a joint meeting with them, where we could, like both adopt it at the same time?
It could be, or we could independently.
Well, we sort of want to know that they're going to do it.
I mean, we can do it without them doing it.
Yeah, but we're tied to them in certain ways.
Yeah.
With the
That's all I was
joint,
thinking.
with joint employees only.
Yeah.
But this isn't about employees.
It's not about employees, it's elected or appointed
Yeah.
officials, so it would be,
The only tie that we have is we have a commitment to notify them
if we change.
if we're making changes.
Which is just a nice thing to do.
But it doesn't require that we seek their input or do anything other than let them know we're planning on making changes.
I don't see any reason why we couldn't.
I would like to adopt it.
You are ready?
I'm ready.
You want to so move?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any more discussion?
I think, Mr. Chairman, after, if it is adopted, we do have a situation, as we know, that there is a town employee running for select board. And I think, depending on how the outcome of this election is, we could revisit it, because I do think there is a kind of a conflict of interest of a town employee serving on the select board.
Well, this actually addresses that. If you or a spouse or other relatives directly benefit from an action of the board, they would have to recuse themselves.
I understand that part of it, but I just think that, in general, just perception alone, that whether or not that they are voting on any particular issue that would directly affect them or not, I think is immaterial. I think that just how it looks.
Well, how would you change the
I wouldn't change the policy now.
Well-
Because we can leave it the way it is for the time being.
Okay. It seems like we should craft a policy that will foresee that happening possibly in the future, whether or not the outcome, regardless of the outcome of this particular election. And just to craft good policy to.
I agree with that, But before the election, this would have the appearance of a possible impropriety if we were doing it now, I would think. Maybe others think different than I do, I don't know. But I wouldn't want to do it now, considering we do have a public employee that is running for a public office.
You can't prevent somebody from running.
Exactly.
And being elected. What you can prevent is, if you're an elected official, you cannot be an employee. So the school has that kind of a policy where you're elected to school board, you cannot be an employee of the school district. The towns in the area, like Eden, they don't have that, and their highway foreman is actually serves on the school, select board, so I guess it can go all either way.
I just leave it the way it is.
Yeah. But for the policy in front of us, what's the board's pleasure? We got a motion second, are we prepared to vote? Yes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Can we skip over the budget? Because I believe Barb is probably here for town meeting warnings. Then you can go home.
Yes.
Yep. So articles for the town meeting warning, let's go ahead and do, I've got two that I know I want to talk about. The petition that Barb and Charles brought in for us to review the language of the
We don't have them-
adopted,
We don't have them in front of us, do we? Or-
I'm sorry, you don't have
Okay.
the language. And we had talked about having a meeting on Monday where we'll have the final written articles. I did receive, you have a copy, Barb?
I do.
Thank you very much.
I don't have copies for everyone, but I do.
I brought my own copy.
We can pass that down, I'm familiar with it.
But I understand you and Rosemary had concerns about the wording and whether. it can
We
be
did.
two articles.
In the first paragraph, there's a sentence, if the town of Johnson is to have a inclusivity statement. And then it goes on, and I think it's in the third paragraph, it suggests language for the inclusivity statement. I could be wrong, but I believe your intention was to ask a single question about whether this language should be adopted or not for the inclusivity statement, and not to ask two questions. One being, would we have an inclusivity statement or not? And then a second question, if we had one, the language would be
Right, the second part is what I wanted, yes.
yes. I was a little bit concerned just because of the way it was phrased, that if statement in the first paragraph had me a little bit worried. I talked to our attorney. We can just adopt this as a single question of this language. If a vote of yes, we adopt this language. A vote of no, we keep our current language.
Okay.
So, before we really get into it, can I just ask a logistical question? So,
Yeah.
we, as a board, voted in the inclusivity statement that we did. So, now if we put this as an article in town, okay?
Finish your question. I'm sorry.
No,
I thought of one other.
Okay. So if we then decide tonight to include this as an article in town meeting, that would potentially undo what we voted in.
Basically, yeah, because the voters' article would trump us.
You don't have a choice whether you include it.
And we don't have a choice whether we include this, because we did have a legitimate petition handed in. But if the voters voted in favor of this, it would trump ours. If they voted it down, then ours would stand.
Okay, I just wanted to get the logistics figured out, okay.
Strictly speaking, this would be advisory and a non-binding resolution, because this is not one of the assigned duties of the select board.
Not if the voters approve this. It would be,
Well, it's, in its way, it's similar to the statement we had about Trump, in that the voters are, we don't have to have an inclusivity statement. So,
if the voters approve it, unless I'm wrong, because this is something that we can affect, we can implement as a town board with the voters' mandate. The Trump question is something that we could not, it's an advisory thing only because we cannot, on our behalf, do anything. At the end of the day, we couldn't affect that in any way. This one, we can affect it, and I think it is mandatory if the voters approve it. I could be wrong, but that's how I read it. If it's something that we can legally act on, and the voters approve it, it's mandatory that the select board, or that would become the policy.
So then, if it's advisory only, then we have the option to put it on the warning or not.
No.
We did last year.
Mhm.
We had a whole discussion about whether we were gonna include that Trump thing on the,
Because that was something we could not legally affect.
that's what, advisory, as I just said.
Right, yeah.
Eric thinks it's not advisory.
This is
You
not
believe
advisory.
this is not advisory, and so it
Because
can't,
it's within our power to do.
but therefore, we don't have the ability to change the language of it either.
We cannot change the content because the voters that signed this petition signed it the way it was presented.
They signed this, we can't change
But
this.
we can change the wording. If there's something that's just not correct in the wording, we can modify it as long as it doesn't change the intent of what the voters signed. There have been times petitions have been handed in that were not correctly done, and we had to modify the question a little bit to make it where it could go before the voters. And we can legally do that. We just can't change we couldn't go in and change the wording of this,
To mean something different,
right, yeah.
to,
Can you bifurcate it? Can you make it 2 questions?
It sounds like we don't need to, so I would.
Well, you don't have to. But can you?
We could,
Because a lot of people that signed the petition didn't think we needed an inclusivity statement, but if we do, then they preferred the latter. And then there were people that signed it just to get the public debate going.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't really see a whole lot of problem. I mean, it's just we propose the statement to be changed to read. I don't. Are we making too much out of this, or?
My point is, in the petition is worded the way, A, do we need an inclusivity statement, yes or no? A lot of people feel that we don't. B, if we do need, okay, and if not, then it's done. If we do need one, is it the one that the 20 brought forward, or the one that the 110 brought forward?
And does that become 2 articles in the agenda?
Yes.
they can have 2 questions in one article,
Oh,
but
okay.
I could agree with you or disagree with you. Either way, Charlie, I could see where it could
Okay.
go either way.
Nothing new, Eric.
Yeah.
So if it was 2 questions, and the first one was, do we need an inclusivity statement? And let's just say the result was no, that also
Wipes out the other one.
wipes
Right.
out the other ones.
The voters trump the board.
I would feel more comfortable. The advice of our attorney is one question.
Yeah.
But I would feel more comfortable if we were to divide it into 2, if we actually reversed the order of them. Just because then we couldn't end up with a contradictory statement. I'm not sure that we can have a conditional article, that we can. I did not get advice on this, but I'm not sure that we can have a conditional article that if this votes yes, then we move on to the second one, and if it votes no, we don't move on to the second question.
right, and that's not what this
So
says.
if we want to do it as 2, my recommendation would be it makes funny sense, but to vote on the language and then vote on whether we have one or not.
I don't think that's the way we would do it.
You're putting the cart before the horse. You're trying to change.
It avoids the situation where we vote no, we don't have an inclusivity statement, but the inclusivity statement should have this language.
Well, we have had articles before in the past where it was a two-part question. And the second part was, if the first part voted in favor, then do you agree to this dollar amount or something like that? So that we have had those type of two-part articles in the past. And if we had to do a two-question, I think we could still do it that way, where do the voters of Johnson want an inclusive statement or policy? If they said no, then there would be no inclusive policy. If they said yes, then the second part is, if voters believe they want an inclusive policy, would they accept this language? And that's where this would come in.
What was your intent, Brian?
My intent that it comes before, I think it's important that it comes before the voters of Johnson to discuss it, to discuss if they want one, and to discuss the language. Or to discuss if they want the new language that I have, I
Okay.
guess.
So that you could see the vote come yes, the people there say they want an inclusivity statement, and then you could move on. Then they would say whether they want it changed, or they don't. If they don't want it changed, then the old one stays.
Yes.
If our attorneys advise we don't need two questions, it would be a lot cleaner just to have it as one question.
Can I make a suggestion on that? If there are people that don't want an inclusivity statement, they have the power to make that motion from the floor when the question comes up. We propose the statement be changed to read X as it reads here. Somebody can stand up and say, we amend to change the inclusivity statement to null.
That's true.
And that does the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, they could change the whole
I hate to give you a blueprint for how to do it.
That's right, you could leave the wording just the way it is.
The voters have that power,
Right,
instead
Let it
of
go.
making it complicated.
leave it the way it is.
Instead of having an article.
So to make an amendment to.
This is the article.
wording that
From
I-
the floor,
They can amend
a
from the
voter
floor
who
to say,
did not want an
vote for the
inclusivity,
inclusivity.
a motion to eliminate the inclusivity statement would be
Sorry, I have to make the.
to change the language
The
to
idea.
nothing.
It simplifies the whole thing.
It actually doesn't.
Okay.
Now you got three choices.
No, you got.
Now you got one choice.
You've got infinite choices once you bring it to town meeting. Anybody can make a motion to change it to be anything.
Your choices are what Dave allows you to do.
I expect there'll be somebody that stands and makes an amendment to say we change it back to the, propose the original language, so it'll, I mean,
This is gonna be a nightmare. This is like, I'm in favor of having a discussion on this, you know. Although
Well, I think it's important for the town to have it, yeah.
But, although Charlie knows my opinion on this, but I think it's important there. I think that we're going to have, we gotta allocate a couple hours to it. It'll be a culture war, you know, people are speaking in codes and stuff. These things mean different things to different people. So, I would, you know,
Then we'll be able to have lunch.
I can't, I'm trying to say, well, the words here stand for what they stand for. They signed the petition, you know, but then I look at it and it said, they request the select board to add, to vote and discuss the town inclusiveness statement. If the statement is determined wanted by the people of Johnson, we would like it to be more positive, you know. So it seems to me that you asked, do you want to have an inclusivity statement?
Correct.
Okay? And then I think thereafterwards, gates are open. It seems to me that you might as well ask, if you want an inclusivity statement, what do you want? You might say, for your information, here are two other versions, but they'll only be versions, you know? You could say the select board adopted this, other people put forward that, but you're gonna have, everything is open at that point.
but whatever we put on that warning has to have some
It has to be
fidelity to this
Well-
language right here.
Yeah, but are you gonna be having it fidelity to the last two paragraphs or the first
The
paragraph?
last paragraph. because that's the
Well-
only one that really makes sense. We propose the statement to be changed to be read. That's what the action is. Everything else is subjective.
If the town inclusiveness statement is determined wanted by the people of Johnson, that's what I'm pointing out, the first paragraph. So that's, I was with you, I was ready to say, let's bring it up and let's make it real simple, and we'll just start with the second paragraph, the third paragraph, and the third paragraph would say, should it be amended to read this, here are your options, but you've got the first paragraph.
We're gonna have something exactly prepared for us for our next meeting, and how it will look.
I do have language from our attorney on this.
Okay, we do?
Yes.
What does it say?
Now you tell us.
But he doesn't show me how much.
The advisory question should be, shall the voters encourage the select board to amend the inclusion statement to say X? To say the bolded paragraph.
That's the last paragraph.
Okay.
Well, that allows it to state what it says plus this, right?
No, it would be replacement, so it would,
It says amend, not replace, what you just read.
it does say amend, but
And you want replace.
We want to replace, yeah.
It has
So
the
you'd be
same.
striking and then replacing.
yeah,
Which
yeah, I
You didn't, this says changed.
merely amend, you can have all that reject nonsense and not have.
I think you're
Refer to this.
right. I don't think we would actually use the language amend, because that sounds like we're adding to it, not replacing.
Yeah.
It sounds like it is layman, but maybe we refer to Doug here, but in legal terms, does that mean what? Or what
Yeah,
does
you
it-
could put, should we amend it to read as follows and put it in
Okay.
quotes?
Yeah.
And it would accomplish the same thing.
Yeah,
as
it's putting it in
replace.
quotes, and I'm saying amendment, here.
Amend to,
Yeah,
because laymen are the ones that are voting, not, we don't all have, all the voters don't have Doug's experience.
I don't see what's wrong with the way it's all written, right to start with.
You can't have an article like that through the warning. It's gotta be much more condensed, there's some opinion in there, that you wouldn't have in an article.
I understand, but they were 100 and how many? You got 150 signatures on this?
About 115.
But the meat of what they're asking is what our attorneys have given
Okay,
us.
if that's okay. What am I to stick a wrench in the works, but
That
makes
would
me
be-
wonder what all these people were signing thought of the whole thing, too.
Well, you can ask Doug. He signed it. What did you sign, Doug?
because I thought that, I'd actually considered, making a motion or trying to get this on the warning, I'm actually in favor of one versus the other, but that's not, the question of who ought to be deciding is a different question than that. So that's why I signed.
Okay.
I don't know how to accomplish this, but my concern is really less with exactly what language goes on the warning than how the discussion unfolds, how we lead the conversation, how we listen to each other as a community and respect each other and not talk past each other and get angry at each other. And I don't know how to do that, but I think that the people that are talking about this on all sides have a heck of a lot more in common and care about this community very, very much. And I hope that we can lead the conversation in a respectful direction.
I think you may find yourself a lead story on WCAX or something, depending on the outcome of this, so. But we still need to have it.
And I think Dave does a pretty good job of keeping town meeting under control.
Dave does a real good job.
Yes, yes, so if somebody is disrespectful or, you know, he's quick to call it out or whatever.
Yeah, and we will go over all the articles with Dave before town meeting, and he has a very good grasp on the voters and what he anticipates could be a little controversial. He knows how to handle it. I don't see it as a problem.
Oh, well, I think we have to negotiate the waters, that's all.
Yep. I mean, the voters will,
It is going to be what it is.
yeah,
Yes.
the voters will decide.
So it can still be 2 questions or not. It's still, the decision isn't made.
From the sounds of the advice of our attorney, it doesn't need to be 2 questions, so we probably would go with the advice of our attorney.
And somebody still could make an amendment to it if they chose to.
Oh, yeah, they most definitely can.
Again,
They could bastardize that from one end to the other.
okay.
Okay,
So I'll have language that I'll share this week, and Barbara and Charles, I'll share a copy with you of the proposed language.
Okay.
Okay, just Barbara.
Just
Okay.
part. All
Yeah,
I
just
did was
part.
carry the water.
All right.
Carry the water?
It wasn't this was not my idea.
Well, it was mine. Last week.
But I'll make sure you get a copy of the
Okay.
proposed language once,
You can email me. I think you
Yeah.
have that, so.
I'm pretty sure I do. If not, I'll catch you up here when you're here for art this week.
and
Okay. Well, not tomorrow, we're not going to be.
thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
It's too cold for old people to come out.
Okay.
That's what I was told.
And you had a couple of other articles?
I have one other article that I know about, and that's the what am I calling it? The Recreation and Community Development Coordinator. And you have a copy of the job description here. So this is the position that we had discussed a little bit about for serving as a recreation coordinator and community development coordinator to serve rec purposes and the additional duties with some of the other community groups. I'm planning on this article referencing in broad strokes, kind of the general summary of the duties of the position, the estimated number of hours, which right now I'm estimating at 30 hours a week. That it'll be, I think we're probably looking at, I'm getting some information from the state recreation professional group about pay rates in similar towns, but we'll use that in the salary survey to develop a pay rate, but I'm estimating around $16 to $18 an hour, plus prorated benefits, so it would be 3/4 benefits.
Of course, we don't know the exact, because it depends on what they choose for health insurance and all that.
Right. So I will have an estimated dollar
Yeah,
figure.
we would need an estimated, if it's 50,000 a year, or 30 or whatever, but.
Yeah. I'm estimating with benefits, pretty close to the 50,000.
Probably, I bet.
Do I have time to get the page of the town report?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So Carrie we all saw Carrie's email, Carrie
O'Halloran?
Yes.
So she was really concerned that this was way too much for one person's plate. That was my understanding from her email. Which was a concern that I kind of had too. And it was good to hear I wasn't alone on that. So I'm wondering if we want to revisit this a little bit. I mean, I know we don't have to. I don't know.
When we actually get somebody here, boots on the ground, we probably will be relooking
Yeah.
at it if we've assigned too many tasks, but my impression was that we're adding significant hours to make the job appealing to prospective applicants out there. And she may not have realized how many more hours we were looking at either, but
Well, she said, what, 20 to 25 hours she felt just for the rec?
Yeah, and I think that was legit. I think we were looking at 30-hour position.
We're looking at a 30-hour per week position.
And the skate park is not gonna take that many hours.
The skate park estimated 250 hours a year.
250 hours a year.
That's your 5 hours, isn't it?
But, yeah.
Okay.
You're turning this into a full-time job, not a half-time job,
It eventually will be, I
a
bet.
three-quarter-time job or whatever it is, but.
I just don't understand where the community development part comes in.
Yeah.
You have the skate park and recreation.
Yeah,
don't
I
know
feel
what
like it could
community
be,
development is.
We could scale it back to just those two.
I was supporting you.
You know, that,
yeah. Yeah.
you know, that we had wanted
Making the original ask kind of small.
some other things out of the position, but I know those two groups could use all the hours we can afford to give them.
Big, huge ask.
You know what I think is, the community development is what's,
You're right, otherwise.
it's gonna cause us problems, those words. If it was
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
the recreational and, well, actually, it's just recreational,
Community
Coordinator.
recreation.
community recreational coordinator, and remove the development, maybe word out of there. That might, because people are gonna think of the development is like what we had with Leah. We had an economic development coordinator. And this position probably wouldn't be developing anything. They're more coordinating, right?
I mean, it depends on what we assign them. I mean, right now, the scope of work for this includes room for us for the position to do community development.
Well,
But the more of those duties we assign them, the less time they're gonna have for recreation.
Do you have an hourly, like estimate, or what do you think would a starting wage be?
he said 16 and change.
$16 to $18 an hour.
I believe with the pedigree that we're looking for on this job description, I don't think you're gonna find many people who are gonna be interested in the job. Not at $16 to $18 an hour.
I'd like to see the focus on the recreation part, and not the development part. Even if we could use development here, I think that we need this, there's a serious need on our recreational program, and I think we ought to focus it there.
I'm happy to do that. I can redirect this for recreation. I can cut a few hours that way. The majority of the work was going to be recreation, so I can't cut very many hours from this. But we can still make it a full, a 25-hour-a-week job. And that would give, I'd have to work out the fraction to see what that would be, but we can still offer prorated benefits for a 25-hour-a-week job.
Even if we post it as a 25 to 30, that might help with applicants. Some people might be looking for less hours, work part-time. Others might be looking for the more hours. Might give us a little wiggle room.
The legislature's taking up $15 an hour minimum wage in this session, correct?
I guess. Why?
Well, if the state brings up minimum wage $15 an hour, people can get that for flipping hamburgers. You're not gonna get anybody with a bachelor's degree and all of these other things that you're looking for $16 an hour? I don't believe at all.
But they haven't done that yet.
Yeah, I think that our wages would be affected I think our wages across the board would be affected if
I mean,
they
the
passed
highway
the
guys'
$15.
wages would get pushed up. Everybody's wages would get pushed up.
But I also think that's not overnight. I think that's.
True. I
That goes
understand
into
that.
the time.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but you see what we're looking for here on this.
Oh, yeah, no,
It's quite a deal, really, and it's quite a lot of experience and quite a lot of education. And I think that most people that would fit that bill would find employment elsewhere, which would pay considerably more money.
I think it's a good point. Yeah.
I think we should advertise for, or should go for 25 to 30, and if it was 30, it would be this, and then we could, as Eric was saying, we could fit it to somebody's schedule, and also we could determine when they're on the ground, we could determine what the needs are.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my thought.
So for
Yeah.
the article then, I'm going to continue to estimate the salary at $18 an hour. And I'll continue to estimate this as a 30-hour-a-week job
Yeah,
For-
for the article, we need.
for the article.
Okay. And did we decide to get rid of the community development?
I
Part of the
think
title?
that's more than just in title, that's in duties too.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I just, I think it's important that whomever takes on this job can do it well, because this is, that's the point. And as much as I would love to see the community part, I think that this is more than enough for a recreation person.
You're right.
I want to just be really realistic about it.
Sure.
So, I'm shooting my own foot, but.
Yeah, that's exactly the point of the conversation tonight, is to
I'm doing myself.
make sure that we're
a disservice,
comfortable
but that's
with the
Well,
position as it's being estimated before we write an article for it.
Yep. We're gonna have to get that finalized by Monday.
Yeah. No, that's easy enough to do.
Oh, everybody available next Monday to have a final budget meeting and approve the articles?
I think that was already on my,
I think we had talked about it.
it's not on my calendar. Okay, it's 28th at 7.
Yeah.
I had it in already, actually, yeah.
You wanna just go right down through your report and come back to the budget?
Sure.
Diana, is there something you're here for?
I was hoping you might talk about class 4 roads, or
Uh,
at least that I could talk about class 4 roads.
It's not on our agenda. If I give you a couple minutes,
Sure.
go for it.
Oh, right now?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I was kind of swept up in the other conversation. I was told by Donna, who happens to be my sister, when we were out walking on Prospect Rock Road, which is where I live, she said, "Do you realize you're supposed to have a permit to plow your road?" And I said, "You're kidding, right?" And she said, "No, I'm not kidding." And I said, "You gotta be kidding, that's just silly." And so that instigated my thinking and research with regard to class 4 roads. And so I pulled up the town document on the website about class 4 roads, and I noticed that it had been addressed in 2013. And then I compared that to the state statute, and I ended up with more questions than answers. And it seemed like maybe it would be time to invite the Town Selectboard to revisit the issue of class 4 roads, to provide some clarity to people who live on them with regard to what the responsibilities of the adjacent landowners are, and the responsibilities of what the town, what their responsibilities are, and to do away with the permit for snow plowing, because I didn't see anywhere in there that seemed to be a requirement, from the state.
So we've had a long discussion on this, and I think we ended at, you need a permit but no charge, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Just so that we're aware that a road's being
Yeah.
open.
To me, it just opens up a can of worms, because I live on Prospect Rock Road. You've been up to my house for ham radio field days, and everyone else in town has probably driven by my house on their way to Prospect Rock. It's a heavily used road. And I tell you what, you could probably get the 1,500 yards of sand that you need this winter from the stuff you dug out at the side of that road. Creating that ravine, that was a lot of material to remove. That's a different topic.
So-
But what
So basically, all we want is so that we have record of what roads are open and people are maintaining to the extent of plowing.
Yeah.
But it won't cost you anything, we waive the fee.
Yeah, the thing is it's a shared road,
Yeah.
and different people plow it at different times. We don't have a routine, we don't have an assignment of who does it when. If Manchester's logging at the end of the road, he plows
How do we
it.
deal with that?
If Jim Bradley's going up to camp, he plows it.
'Cause
It's a good question. That's not easily addressed by
It's not.
our policy as I understand it. Our policy suggests that if you're doing work on the road, you should have a permit. So it sounds like under our current policy, we would have lots of permits for that.
for that one road. But it'd be no different than Sinclair Road or Cotting Hollow or some of those others.
We could probably cover it with a single permit and multiple signatories to the permit. But that would get,
Can of worms.
yeah.
We're probably gonna
I-
have to revisit this.
Well, Brian, you'd given us a draft of a new.
A new right-of-way access
No, that's a different.
permit. I think that this might take, I'll look closer at the draft. It's access to the right-of-way, and it also covers any work inside the right-of-way.
Right.
So it addresses the permit side of this. Our Class 4 road policy would also come into play. And our current Class 4 road policy, I believe, is where it says that you have to obtain a permit for doing plowing. That I believe our Class 4 road policy is where it says that that is an action that will obtain a permit. So that it's not a discretionary.
Well, one of the other questions that came up is we keep open about a 100-yard stretch of Class 4 road from the end of the Class 3 road to our driveway. We keep it open with a snow blower. We don't have a plow. Do you need a permit for snow blowing, or is that only for plowing?
You're not gonna be simple today, are you?
Oh, this is just the start of my list.
Well, that's every driveway in town.
Exactly.
The problem is that, we have people who, here we have a definitional problem of what is work on a road.
Exactly.
The problem is that the fourth-class roads are owned by the town. We have an obligation not we can't do any work on them, or they become Class 3 roads. And yet we have a duty to pass them on. And we also, you might want to snow blow your driveway, but the logger in front of you could just completely destroy it. So we are, trying to have a handle on that type of thing, and we've had roads destroyed. So we're trying to monitor it so that you actually have access, and then you're under the bus because of the definition of work.
Should we make this a work session meeting?
Right, you know how I think about Class 4 roads.
Because there's no easy answer on Class 4 road.
The thing that I found out when I came down here and looked at our property boundary is it describes our property ownership as going to the center of the Class 4 road.
Yes.
And I didn't know if that applied just to our particular plot. When I look at the picture of it, our property boundary literally goes up the middle of the road for our plot, but it looks like other people's property boundaries comes down to the road and ends. So that was one of my other questions, is if you have land that borders a Class 4 road, does your ownership go to the center of the road, or does it stop at the edge of the road in the right of way?
That'd be a tax mapper question.
Really?
There is a state standard, and I'm sorry, I don't recall which it is, but in Johnson, we have both.
I think the standard is center of the road, but we have as many properties, parcels that show the edge of the road. And the town actually doesn't own the land. It's a right-of-way that we own from some eons ago.
And so that led me to think, if I own the land to the middle of the road, is it actually my responsibility to keep at least half the road open and passable, in which case I'd be required to do work on it.
Because there's people on Route 15 that own half of that highway, and they're not responsible for.
We own the highway.
They're
You own the
dominant
right.
subordinate uses. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, no, you were speaking much more intelligently than me, so please continue.
If you start out on this thing, you go back and if the town knows that it owns the road, or to the edge of the road, that's the boundary. Many of our roads, it would cost many thousands of dollars to figure out if it was dedicated ever or who owns it. So the statute that the legislature passed says that there's a presumption that the property owner owns to the middle of the road. Okay, it's a presumption, you know. So therefore, that presumption gets you taxed on the land that's under the road, but the dominant easement is the town's right of way on it, and so you can't, you know, if you're using it's a 3-rod, it's a presumption of a 3-rod road, 16.5 feet times 3, so 49.5 feet, and the town has the right to use it, and you shouldn't be able to put anything in that right of way, and we should be able to take it out, so you can't farm to the middle of it, you know, and all we have certain encroachments like that. So if the line is the road, is the outside boundary of the road, then presumably whoever's tax mapping knows that the boundary is there. Otherwise, they're operating on the presumption.
I guess I'm still wondering about the contradiction though, where there might be some obligation on the landowner's part to keep the road passable and open.
No, there's no contradiction because what you have is an underlying interest subordinate to the interest of the town and its obligation of maintaining the roads.
So if the town has an obligation to maintain the road, why don't they?
They don't have an obligation to maintain 4th-class roads, but they own the right-of-way. So the road classifications matter a great deal in terms of what the town's obligation are. Many people on 4th-class roads have not paid the significant amount of money as if you were for location, and it costs a lot to build a road to that, and that goes into the value. Access goes into value.
I understand that there's not state appropriations for a Class 4 road, but I didn't understand that prevented you from choosing to spend money as a town if you chose.
Well, if we do, then we have a road policy that we will take over a third class. We will bring, if the public good, there's statutes on what public good is and when it's required. When a public good requires us to take over a road and convert it from 4th class to 3rd class, and we have a regulation on that. And it's only when we hold the hearings and then you put the money in, you bring it up, you maintain it for a year, then we vote on if we're going to take it. You know, so we don't have any obligation to maintain these things. We are trying to avoid, saddling the taxpayer with obligations to bring these roads up to their the usage that people have moved on them, and with the idea they're going to take care of themselves. And yet, yeah.
Are you allowed to expend money on a Class 4 road without mandating that it turn into a Class 3 road?
If we
have money budgeted. We have budgeted money for culverts. You are right, you have a right to how many yards of gravel?
I don't recall.
There's
25?
a certain amount of gravel that you have a right to get from the town. We won't truck it for you, but you can get it from the town for free for maintaining the Class 4 road.
Depending on the amount of nature of our activity, if we were plowing the road, certain towns have been sued and they have been required to take them over because they were acting like they were 3rd-class roads. Mm-hmm. Meaning the passable for year-round personal automobiles.
Right.
You know, last weekend accepted, sort of. You know.
The land that I live on now, my husband's family bought about 40-some years ago. And up until 20 years ago, the town took care of that road on a regular basis. They graded it, and they kept it passable up to the trailhead to Prospect Rock, because it was a heavily used road. And in the last 20 years, the town's changed their policy and said, we don't do that anymore. And I guess that's one reason why I request maybe you guys take another look at it and see if maybe you don't want to take every class 4 road up to a class 3 road, but maybe look at situations like that where maybe it was historically maintained to a different level than it's being maintained now, and see if it wouldn't be worth putting a little bit of work in on that road that's so heavily used.
Well, it's exactly what Doug just referred to, is towns being held liable. Years ago, we did. We used to offer, I think, once a year, we would grade the road, particularly in your case where there's people that live on it. We did a certain amount of maintenance, and we got advisement from our attorneys and the League of Cities and Towns, because of towns that got sued, like Doug referenced. Stop, because what was happening is we were playing favorites. We would do your road and maintain it to a certain level, but not do someone else's. And all the class 4s have to be treated the same, and that's what got a lot of towns into trouble. They got lost, suits on them and all that. And that's why some number of years ago we changed the policy where we no longer maintain them. We will, to fulfill the statutory requirements, provide culverts, and then we allow gravel for individuals that live on the road. But it was something that came out of the lawsuits years ago, and sometimes not all good out of the lawsuits. But I don't think we're gonna.
No, thank you for answering my questions and letting me have a few minutes, thanks.
You should have a permit, but where there's multiple ones of you, I guess maybe we need to address that and think about it, but we're not gonna be able to do it tonight.
The question comes to my mind, does anybody in the town have a permit for plowing a class 4 road? I mean, have you actually issued any permit for that?
Not many.
So, I mean,
Very, very few.
We're not enforcing it yet, so.
So thinking of that as like an actual requirement of your ordinance doesn't seem to make sense if nobody's doing it. I mean, saying that, oh yeah, it's required seems meaningless unless you do some huge amount of public education to let people know they have to do it.
We're not gonna cyclone oil on you if you're up there plowing your road.
It's like a scoff law.
I mean, I just question what the point is of even saying it's a requirement if you're not gonna enforce it.
Good point, Don.
Well,
Yeah,
we need a hard look at this.
yeah.
Yeah.
And put that in the minutes, that you said that.
Rob Rodriguez is the other citizen who's read those policies closely recently, and you might find that,
He's also lives on a class 4 road. There's quite a few number around town, people that live on class 4 roads.
Yeah. Which is why it might be worth revisiting that 2013 rules.
Yeah, I personally think it's ridiculous to require these people to get a permit to plow. I think we should define it right out, but that's not where we stand.
I agree with Doug. You're doing the town a favor by plowing and maintaining the road for them, so there should be lots of leniency, I think.
No, I think there has been, in terms of this is brought to our attention after the winter had started, so it was a little bit late for us to go after people, so we've been pretty lenient with it. But like the public information campaign, if this is gonna be our policy for next winter, we need to start well before winter to start getting permits out, that,
Yeah.
starting in December to issue permits that are required for the winter services late.
We don't want our townspeople to think they're breaking the law.
keep in mind, most people don't register their dog, so.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a-
and you're
it's
supposed
a-
to register your dog too.
And people should know that already. That's not an obscure thing, so it's gonna be a tough education battle.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to get moving.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Request to review the combined time off program.
that's not gonna be a tonight discussion.
No, we've received a request from one of our employees to revisit the way we're dealing with the 3 banks for accrued time. In particular, the 3rd bank, the catastrophic leave bank, the fact that it is, that there's no value returned on that if the employee retires with time in their third bank. They'd like the board to revisit that policy. The board has had some interest in this. I don't know that the board wants to take this up tonight or not, but.
We don't have time.
No, it's.
Well, yeah, the last time, we don't have time. The last time this came up, probably 3 or 4 years ago now.
It came up a little bit more recently around when Chris was retiring. There was a question about what would we do. Did we want to do something about it before Chris retires? Because Chris had.
Did he have time in
I don't actually believe that he did in the end. But, we knew somebody was retiring. Did we want to do something about it before somebody had to retire and possibly lose this time? And I don't know that we had a definitive decision about it, but we didn't act.
No, because the joint boards were gonna get together and look at it. It's a joint policy, and it sort of fell apart.
Well, what I was gonna say is, about 4 years ago, when we looked at it, as a joint board, we had a special committee, trustees, select board, that Eric and I served on, I believe. And the employees at that time came in very strongly supporting the policy as it stood, as I recall. That was their position at that time. We've had quite a lot of turnover in the highway department in the meantime, but that's what I recall.
I think it depends a lot on what the alternative is. My impression, not having been here for the last time this was reviewed, my impression was that they favored the current program over what was being proposed.
Okay.
Currently, there's only 2 people that have catastrophic.
Pardon?
Currently, there's only 2
people
people
that
that
have
have catastrophic time in the bank,
Yourself?
and 1 highway person.
One highway person.
Does the village have the same deal that the town has as far as these banks? So, because they
It's a
have to be,
joint
because
policy.
we got joint employees that are
Yeah.
affected by it, so what's the village sense on it?
They haven't discussed it, to my knowledge.
Does the board have the interest in opening this up?
Not tonight.
Well, no, it would require the 2 boards getting together and forming a committee and.
I don't have any interest in it. I thought it was well thought out before.
Do you want to relook at it?
I don't agree with the whole bank procedure anyway. I'm on the record saying that, but I mean, I'm just one board member.
Kyle?
Did you say that one employee is bringing this up?
It was brought to my attention by one employee.
One employee, okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't
think
feel the
both
urge to go into it, but
Okay. I'm sensing not a stomach for it right now. Request to adopt on call.
Yes. So the highway employees are interested in looking for adopting some kind of on-call policy. They've offered a few concessions, made a few requests, and I can share some of that information. The first, like Brian mentioned in his report, the employees have agreed to a change in policy. I believe it started last year, but it might have started the year before, that has helped us keep overtime hours down, and that's that the employees are going home after they work 8 hours, when possible. So for example, if they get called in a little bit early at like 2 in the morning, if it doesn't snow again in the afternoon, they're going home at 10 a.m. After, they've worked 8 hours, and if it's not snowing anymore that day, they're going home. And they have put up with a couple times being called back in later that afternoon when it snowed and it wasn't predicted to snow. That they've come back and plowed the roads for the school buses late in the day.
I don't see that as a concession. This board ordered Steve, Prior, and then Brian to do that. So I don't see that where that's a concession from them. They didn't have a choice. The board ordered it. But, okay.
They're regarding it as a concession. It was a change in policy ordered by the board, but it wasn't a give and take at that time. What they're suggesting is that two procedures. In the winter, there would be no minimum call-out time. So they would go out for just as long as they were needed. But they would like $200 a week for on-call pay. The summer, there would be a 2-hour minimum call-out time. And they would still like $200 a week for on-call pay.
That's a higher number than was discussed the other night.
This is higher than any of the towns that we have reporting.
And what are the numbers falling in at with the other towns? Like, does Hyde Park have it?
Hyde Park does not have any
Okay.
on-call pay. Most of the towns that have on-call pay are less than $100 a week.
It's like 80 or something.
The village does 80. The South Burlington has the highest amount. I think that they have the highest amount and that they're not answering the question quite right. They are listed at $340 a week. I believe that I know they have 2 employees on call. I believe that's $340 for both employees, not each. Which is still significantly more. The next highest is $140 in, I believe it's Westford.
So what about towns comparable in size, number of miles, number of employees to Johnson?
We didn't get very many respondents, so we don't have a
Good one.
a great, apples to apples comparison. But, I would say that our most comparable towns would be closer to $40 to $80 a week.
So how does on-call pay work? I mean, they get this for the fact that they are available to show up?
Yes,
And then they get the money that they show up for?
yes.
And so $200 a week would be a $10,000 raise?
That's only when you're on call.
Well, our employees would effectively be on call constantly.
Oh, okay.
Right now, we're working on a slight rotation where we only have, we have 1 employee who is not on call on any given weekend. So that it gives people an opportunity to have a little bit of a break during the week. They're not interested in continuing that during the summer, because in the summer, it's a lot, we get called out more often for trees down and things like that, where would be convenient just to send whoever's nearby just goes out and does it, rather than having to deal with, well, this person's on call and this person isn't, just.
All the employees that are hired now and in the past it was a condition of employment that they were on call without compensation.
It is.
Okay, so they took the job under those circumstances. $200 to me is extremely excessive for on-call pay. And it could be argued that it was in their job description that they took it the way it was with no pay, no extra pay. So my point is we're under no obligation to give on-call pay.
We currently have a 4-hour minimum call out, and that's the compromise that was reached some time ago with the policy.
That is extremely generous also.
It is, and that's why they're offering to go to, for the winter months, having no call out, and for summer, having a 2-hour minimum.
How does the numbers turn out? Have you run an analysis of that with the amount of hours, overtime hours, and the minimum call outs of 4 hours versus the $200 per week?
The minimum, it would be very unlikely for us to save money paying out $200
That's exactly what I would say too.
a week. The employees would do pretty well under that.
Oh, yeah.
The 4-hour minimum call out during the winter isn't often very applicable. Most, the routes take between 3 and 4 hours to conduct a route. Sometimes they get called out and it's not going to be for a whole route. Sometimes it's not going to be something that requires that much attention. So we would occasionally save money if we could send them home right after they finish the task. But that's not, if they're called out for their most routine operation during the winter, that's to plow, they're going to be plowing for 3.5 hours.
Well, I'm sure they're starting out high to take a deal.
They did express an interest in having kind of a back and forth about this.
So if I'm working for the town and I want to go ice fishing, I can only go to Lake Eden?
Basically,
Basically, yeah.
what the guys do give up is every single, once November 1st hits, is every single weekend, they cannot have a drink. They have to stay within the radius of their pages of this town. They couldn't go to Lake Champlain, go ice fishing. They basically give up every weekend until April 1st. I understand where, Mike, you're coming from. That was a condition of employment when they got hired. In the past, the dedication that we had from the employees was just, you couldn't, it was no greater than what we had. But I think it is asking a lot for these guys to be forfeiting every single weekend of their 6 months of the year.
No, don't get me wrong, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to argue that fact. And I'm not here to say that they do not deserve on-call pay.
Right.
You know, I'm just pointing out that we're under no obligation to give it to them.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that we can't give it to them. But I do think $200 is excessive.
I mean,
I think that we should compromise with them on some lower number.
I actually would suggest that Brian takes back to them what the comparables are and have them come back to us with a realistic number.
I can support that, 100%.
I mean, the $200, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but.
It's non-starter.
Yeah, it's a
No.
non-starter, basically.
Yeah.
Could build a wall for that.
That's funny. And I didn't even say that. I wish I'd have thought of that, Doug. Not much of a wall.
Okay, so you want to take that back?
Yeah, I'll take that back. I'll ask for a number more in line with what we're receiving from other towns. You know, and our local village. Next up is local government day.
If anybody has not gone, Nat, that's you too. If, I would strongly encourage, if you've never been before, it is an opportunity to not only meet with our own legislators, but others. The whole State House is open, you can go into any committees, you can
Fun.
testify.
Will there be a lunch?
There is a
Yeah.
lunch.
I always
What
think
day
of
is
the
it
Scrooge.
this year?
Thursday the 14th.
Remember that one?
April 14th.
February 14th.
Big-
Valentine's Day, oh.
It's almost always near or right on Valentine's.
Really?
Yeah.
And what day is that, a Thursday?
Yeah, that's Thursday.
I plan
It is a
on-
lot of fun. Eric and I talked about our plans. We've got a few things that we want to kind of lobby for Johnson.
Nice.
When we get on the bus, nobody's gonna tell us we can't go, right?
That's right.
I'd be interested in going this year.
Okay.
Good.
I'll try to attend it for the fun of it. We all gonna go down in one rig?
I usually
I mean,
drive myself because I've got friends of mine.
If
that I
everybody
usually
wants to
go
leave
visit.
at the same time.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Are you going?
What day is it?
Valentine's Day,
14th of February.
14th. It's a Thursday, the 14th.
Is anybody else going? You're
Yeah,
going?
I'm gonna go.
You're going?
Be my date, Nat.
Oh, cool. Good, so we may have a few people going.
Great.
How does that work? Do you register us, or we
I'll
register
register
us?
everybody who's
Okay.
interested in going.
Okay.
I don't believe there's a fee associated with it, but there might be to pay
Yeah,
for
there
lunch.
is.
Might be for the lunch.
For the lunch, yeah.
Let me,
Town pays for the lunch.
I have to check my work
It's all
schedule.
day, right?
I-
You say you're paying for the lunch, Doug?
The town,
Oh,
so I am, yes. I claim that.
Okay, quick update on the East Johnson sewer transfer. You've got the notice that I've written. This is based on the notice that we had for transferring the Sweetser right-of-way. But I am pointing out that this was not prepared by an attorney, it was prepared by me. So I would appreciate a close eye on it. The statute is 30 days notice before we can complete the transfer. So we will, with your approval, we'll take this, post it, and then in 30 days we can complete the transfer. So our next regular meeting after 30 days is going to be the March 18th meeting. And when we receive this from the trustees, there's not enough time to warn it and get it on the February meeting.
Okay.
So my suggestion would be, since they are the buyers, that their attorney look at it and see if they like it. And if it passes the village's attorney's muster, then.
The notice itself?
Yeah. then
Okay.
we're good. Because that is to whom it has to be accepted.
All right.
and we're not paying for it, by the way.
Depending on their turnaround, it may not make the,
The March 18th meeting.
Right.
Understood it.
but would the board be willing to authorize the chair to sign it contingent upon the village review?
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
God, if we ever get this done.
This is a long time coming.
It's been a decade.
1973 was when they started?
You've received the
I'm serious.
sheriff's report by email.
Yep.
The light industrial park, I've been speaking with John, getting ready for the Northern Borders Regional Grant. That's what we're targeting for construction costs. We're getting ready for that one. We might have to bridge some of those funds to do our final engineering and construction, but we're citing that one to produce funds to hopefully just begin construction, but we'll use some of the funds for final engineering if we need to. And then the last regular item is review old business. After speaking with Ned about this, I made a couple changes to the old business. Evergreen Ledge is still on there because we're still working that out. When I added the conflict resolution training and the gravel pit consultation.
Oh, thanks, great. Good.
If there are not any major updates on any of those items, but if anybody else has anything they want to see for old business, let me know, and we will at least try and spend a few minutes going over these. The street name ordinance is another one, a little bit like a conflict of interest policy that I believe we've made all the changes that we want to see, we just have to take it up.
Great.
Isn't old business also including the blighted ordinance?
It should include blighted buildings.
I have a list. I can share it around. I meant to last time, but we were here so late.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take any other things that we want to see for kind of old business and continuing. Things that are moving ahead, we're still doing a little bit on them, but they're not, you know.
They're not front burners.
Yeah.
You could add branding to that. I'm in good communication with some hotshots.
Great.
Good.
Brand your town potentially.
That would be great.
Where are we on the sign for the rail trail that was being,
We have,
I thought somebody was painting it, during a break.
the mural for the rail trail.
Yeah.
We're gonna be working with Jen about getting that up. That's gonna come just at the end of the year. We'll have to do some of the purchasing out of this current year to make sure that we've got materials and everything, but
Yeah, I believe the plan, and I'll touch base with her again, is that it'll be up as soon as snows off the ground thaws, and we can actually.
Has it been painted?
It's in the works as far as,
Oh,
or at least the concept is figured out, and I don't know how much paint is actually on anything, but it's definitely gonna happen, is happening.
good.
Do it before he sells the building.
It'll be independent of the building, that's what we've decided.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is
Freestanding
something that we
situation.
can,
Good idea.
Yeah.
we're
that
putting
was
it up there,
little
but we can
tricky.
relocate
That we
it.
haven't
We
really-
cited out some
And it's happening very soon.
town-owned property in the area that we can relocate it to if need be.
Okay.
You know, it's great if it can go right next to the buildings, then it's not taking up
You don't know.
extra space.
I've been seeing activity
Um,
there a little bit.
We also have 2 grants out for Rise Vermont. One for 3 benches to place on the rail trail. We're modeling a grant that Hyde Park and Morrisville have done. Well, I should say that Morrisville has done. Hyde Park's in the same state that we are of ramping up and putting out the application. So we purchased 3 of the, plastic and wood pulp benches, the all-weather benches that we placed at a couple points on the rail trail. We have also I'm working on a grant with, for signs for the rail trail. When we have a couple designs, but they're along the line of the signs that are in Hyde Park. Can you refresh me on the woman's name?
Kate,
Kate Lally.
yes, thank you.
Kate Lally was one of the consultants for the Brownfield Committee, helped design the signs for Hyde Park.
They're so nice.
And she's offering to help us a little bit with this too.
Good.
So we've got those 2 grants out.
We got a couple of items, if there's no further old business, that we added to the agenda.
Yep.
One was the Holcomb House Power Wash. I think that was you, Nat.
Yes. So I encouraged, the Historical Society's been interested in getting that, they're building the Holcomb House power washed, because it is really unsightly. It's very, very dirty. So Dean West got some quotes. One from Randy Catone, whose estimate was $900, and one from Draper's, their estimate was $2,500. Catone would use a lift to do the work, but if we worked direct, Dean thought maybe if we worked with Farm and Garden, we could get a reduced rate on that. Draper indicated he would use ladders to do the work, so we assume his $2,500 is all inclusive, but he's not using a lift. Lift rental at full rate is $325 a day, plus one-time moving charge of $100. So there's another $45. We figure 2 days cost, therefore Catone's estimate would be about as much as $1,700. Catone versus Draper at $2,500. So I wanted to see if the board had any interest in accepting that quote from Catone to get that building power washed in spring.
Okay, you so moved? What, not, I mean, okay, you can make your move and we'll discuss it again.
Well, let's discuss it first, because I want to have some questions myself.
Okay. Can I go first? Sure. When I read that, I kind of, might be just me, I was slightly confused. The original quote, the bid was $2,500, and somebody else came in at $900. And so when I read that, I kind of got the impression that they were going to do that job completely for $900. And then all of the stuff comes in about volunteering a lift and everything else kind of confused me. So I guess I don't, to me at first look, it looked like the other guy was going to do that job for $900.
Our price to him, yes, he would do the job for $900. We would rent a lift, essentially. Dean West is suggesting that we rent the lift.
Okay, but the way that when I first read it, I kind of read it a couple of times, I kind of got the impression that it was a $900 bid and then we didn't furnish anything. But then you go further down and it looks like we have to furnish the lift and do everything else too.
Furnish the lift.
So then it brings it up to $1,700.
That's correct.
Then we have all the other problems of washing that all off and then Chip taking the paint all off from the overspray,
There's the
from
paint issue.
the pressure washer, and then we'll have to paint the trim.
Well, the overspray of the pressure washer onto the trim.
Right. Then we'll have to have a contract to paint it.
Well, and the building's old enough, we'll probably have to have.
Don't even mention the word.
All right.
I was actually wondering what the painting schedule would be for that building, because it just seems like having it be such a light color, this is going to be a continual problem of looking dirty and needing pressure washing. And the building our store is in is a dark colored building, and it's so much more forgiving.
Oh, yeah. Even a gray would be much better than that color.
Well, it's vinyl, so it's...
Oh, it's vinyl.
Yeah, it's vinyl.
When my building on School Street was really awful, I took a hose to it, did a marvelous job.
Yeah. We've got pretty good pressure here, and they show these things all the time about the jet, and it puts out soap. You soap your building off and then you spray it off. I just can't imagine spending $1,700 to do that building.
I was happy with my building. That doesn't mean that their building is not that much worse and it's not required. I mean, I'm not qualified to make that, but I was very hesitant, having spent 2 hours walking around my building and being very satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, my goal is just to help the Historical Society to get that building clean and presentable, so it looks good to the public, and we can take pride in how it looks. How we get there, this was an option. If there's a cheaper option, I'm all for it.
I'm not saying it would work.
I mean, I imagine the expense isn't in the pressure washer itself, it's in the labor to get up on the lift and start doing the work. Once you get the equipment there, it's,
True.
goes
But
pretty
you're
quick.
gonna have a lot of pressure coming out, and it's gonna pull off a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, contrary to popular belief, I'm not a stinker, you know.
I don't think you're a stinker at all, Mike. I think you're a good cut.
But just trying to save the town money, that's all. Just like we all are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's a good point. If there's a better way to do it, let's do it. But throwing it out there.
I mean, if somebody wanted to do it, the town has a pressure washer, but it would still require a lift.
It would still require a lift, and it would require I think it would require volunteers to do it.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about trying we'd hoped to do that in the fall, but winter came on earlier than we were prepared for, so it's one of the things that didn't get done.
You'd hope to do that with our highway workers?
Yes.
Our Public Works Department.
With our Public Works Department?
That building and this one, we had wanted to do both.
Well, if there's a chance they're gonna have capacity to do that there's a cost for that too, but this summer, then maybe that's a better way to go.
I mean, this building, the village could help, and they have the bucket truck, they wouldn't even need a lift.
Use the bucket truck up there too.
You'd have to pay them for it.
Yeah, they might give us a better deal than $700 and something for the lift. Plus moving charges and everything else.
Yeah.
I was asking.
Yeah.
But I don't think with a wind chill factor of 35 below, we have to
don't
do
have to
much
worry
better
about it
tonight. You know, so,
They've gotten the quotes. I asked them to do something. They got the quotes, so I wanted to bring it up.
thank you.
So you wanna table it until more warmer months and then revisit it?
I'll talk to
I
them
think
some
we
more.
should put it on the old business list if it isn't.
Let's put it on the end, let's do that.
The RFP update?
Hold on 1 second. So we don't have good news about the RFP update. Had spoken to a couple folks. I ended up not getting any returned submissions. The closest we got was a formal offer of legal representation during the merger. But,
Cool.
so we have two options. There's a consultant that Meredith knows that is probably going to be willing to submit something. You know, but we don't have, they would be willing to submit something, so we could wait for their submission. We could put the RFP as written back out. Or one consultant that I spoke to who is not going to be submitting something, and will not be submitting something regardless of how we change the RFP, did offer to spend a little bit of time helping us rewrite the RFP. They seem to have some thoughts about things that they might suggest that we do differently. But they are based in New Hampshire. They have no Vermont presence to speak of. They feel that the cost driving back and forth to Vermont, to Johnson, would be too much, so they're not interested in doing this. But they've done this kind of work before, and they offered a little bit of help with the scope of work.
They give a sense on how much that would cost.
No.
Because $8,000 that's not gonna get consultants out of the woodwork.
No, I worked on drumming up support as best I could, and I wasn't able to. I thought I had one, but they ended up dropping out.
Is the village aware of this yet?
They're meeting soon, but they might have had an email about it, but they haven't met since, well, Friday was the deadline, so they haven't met since
They met on Monday and talked about it last Monday.
yeah. And last Monday, we had a couple leads, but we didn't have any, we had no submissions. We were concerned we were gonna have no submissions, but we did have a couple leads at that time. None of them panned out.
Do you know if Waterbury or any of the other recently merged towns, if they had a consultant that they used?
Everybody I've spoken to recently has not used a consultant. Essex did not use a consultant, and the representative from Essex shared with me that they kind of wish they had, but they didn't.
Okay.
And they got through it okay, same with Waterbury, but there was a lot more will to make it happen there.
Right.
There wasn't a question of,
Should it or shouldn't it?
do we want to do this or not?
Yeah,
There was a lot of will to make it happen, and then they just had to figure out what the cost was going to be.
yeah,
So they were in a different situation than we are.
got it.
We also could throw it up entirely and build a citizen committee to review it, but that would be, I would not recommend that we go that route until we at least try again to get a submission and I'd like to look at the scope of work again before we give up on that, and either try and rein in the scope of work to be more in line with the cost, or try and raise some more money to spend on the project.
There'd be too many perceptions of bias.
If the citizens did it, yeah,
I shared my opinion with Eric on this, that I think the people that would turn out and volunteer for something like that would all have an opinion already. I think the best you could do is split it down the middle and have so many people for it and so many people against it, but I don't think you'd turn out very many people who were undecided.
Could a regional planning commission do something like this?
The village has objected to having the regional planning commission do this.
I was thinking about one from elsewhere, since they do contracts. They set grants.
I don't know, that's a good question.
We ought to look into that. They rejected Lemoyle because of certain people that work there, unfortunately, which are very capable people.
I don't know that you'd find someone who they have time or something like that, but how about an agency, Commerce and Community Development, do they have ideas, or you been there?
We've been there. They helped us with a statewide proposal system that we posted on.
When I spoke to the Stowe, they have a manager there?
Yes.
Okay, when I spoke to him about it, he said, why in the world are you doing this? You don't need that. And I thought, he's wrong, we exactly need it here. Because
We don't need a merger, we don't need study.
he said you don't need to study it. He basically thought it was self-evident in their situation. And the problem here is that it's not self-evident to everyone.
Right.
So we need to have facts on the table.
Right.
And it's the development of the facts wherever they go that needs to be done by a neutral party.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's mostly what we've heard from other communities, is that it was moving forward, so what they needed help with was how to move forward, not whether they should or shouldn't.
So a consultant could help with that, help them with that, but
Yeah.
that's a different purpose than what we have, which is, what is the situation here?
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people, Doug, that do think it's self-evident.
Yes.
on both sides.
But they're not all voting.
You could be surprised if there was a vote taken.
Okay.
But there's an article for the warning.
we could take a chance and just take a vote and not spend all that money.
Well, it wouldn't matter if they don't have a similar vote in the village.
That's true, but
You really buying, if we moved ahead and say, they said, yeah, we'll do it, you know, we agreed to do it, we're buying a pig in a poke, too. You know, there's a couple $100,000 to be spent on a building out there that we wouldn't want to spend. That has PCBs in it, et cetera, that's falling into the river. There's all sorts of stuff that you need to take into.
oh, yeah, I get it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. But, I mean, you take that building aside, and we still have to come up with $200,000, and then you add $200,000 on top of that, that'd be $400,000 for the town to merge with the village.
So that's just one thing. Okay, how do we want to proceed with this?
So again, the three suggestions I have are either delaying until we do get a submission. Well, I believe that we're gonna get a submission in the near term following the old RFP. So we could wait for that before we take any action. We could repost the RFP without any modifications other than the deadline. Or we could go back to the drawing board for a new RFP with a new scope of work.
But the thing is, when you do that, then we'll have to go back and forth with the village. Who knows how long that process will take. We're not gonna have anything at all like town meeting day, at all.
What does the village,
They haven't met since this came out. So to a pretty great extent, whatever we decide, if the village doesn't decide the same thing, then we're back at.
Well, is there any reason why the village wouldn't want to wait for this consultant that you think is going to submit one?
I don't think so. I don't think there's any reason not to.
And if we're going to wait for that anyhow, what's the harm in reposting it, and seeing if you get a couple more?
And I like Doug's idea of asking other regional planning commissions to see
Yeah, we can
if
try
by
that
chance
approach.
they'd be interested in.
Okay.
We just probably politically should go through our planning commission so they don't feel like we're asking somebody to infringe on their territory. They might give you a name of a,
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, just tell them that we're doing it.
yeah. I mean, you could share that there's concern from some members, board members of potential conflicts of interest because of Duncan and Leah being there. Would they suggest another planning commission that might take this on?
You ought to ask Meredith about it.
Yeah,
It's gotta be run by that for,
I'll make sure that that's not a landmine or something that we could accidentally step on.
Well, we wouldn't have to go that route if there's a consultant that's coming,
Yeah.
gonna submit something. But those are sort of like three options that we're laying out.
All right.
To share with Meredith.
So I'm gonna plan on going ahead with posting with an extended deadline. What, thinking like a month?
I'm sure that some people will be glad to delay it as long as possible.
If you posted it for like 2 weeks with a caveat that they must have a letter of intent at least submitted within 2 weeks, that they intend on putting in a bid or proposal.
You're talking about the way it is set now, or to go back with that individual who said that they would help us tweak it a little bit better to make it more palatable?
Well, that'll cost us money. We go there.
It'll cost us money and time. So
I think
if we want to just put it back out there,
I'm saying just put it back out there, but
Okay, well, we can try it that time, and if nothing changes, then maybe we ought to look into changing the way that it's set up, or just asking that group that he was talking to how much they had a sense that they charge us.
I'll reach out and get
Just get an idea of
ask
what
them
it
what they're
costs.
thinking about.
Yeah.
Because
Because,
are they gonna spend 5 minutes and send me a bullet list, or are they gonna actually do a real back and forth with us?
if it's a real back and forth, that might be actually better. If we can tighten it up a little quicker and get it out there, because we didn't have a lot. We didn't have anything the first time around, the way it was worded.
Yep.
So we might save time by going that route. If the board wants to save time.
what's the board's pleasure? Do all the above?
I think you ought to do both. I think you ought to put it out, you know, advertise, and then you ought to check on what it is, and maybe we'd be pleasantly surprised on the cost or not, but if we do something, we're gonna have to vet it with the people who it was a joint RFP with.
Yep.
So, but maybe if they were in the process, if they understood what was going on, they might buy into it, because it would be beneficial to the outcome.
Okay. One other thing to keep in mind, especially if we're talking about keeping costs down. I spoke a little bit to Chris Kaliba at UVM, he's the head of the MPA program. You know, I'm an alumni of the program. This could be a senior capstone project for the MPA program, which would keep costs way down.
That sounds like a deal.
This would be, we'd have to seriously change the scope of work. This was something I was kind of hoping for early on in the process, but what we wanted out of it was not something that I think students would really be able to produce.
Because it's too much.
I think it's too much for a capstone project. Maybe we could do this as an independent study with a smaller group of students. But if we're interested, I can also work with Chris Kaliba a little bit about what he thinks, but that would most likely be pushing the active time further out into the future. It would have to coincide with their program.
What's the credibility of a student project like that?
I helped write a economic development study for Waterbury that they ended up not needing because the project got delayed about when they were going to close Route 100 through downtown Waterbury. But the city or the town was pretty happy with what we'd written. The program has written another piece I helped write was housing needs survey for Winooski. That was very well received, and for the next couple of years, it'll still be their active document for housing in the city. So it's student work, but there's active professionals who are leading a lot of the classes and a lot of the projects.
I'm thinking that the purpose of this is to have a product that's convincing. That's my, when you say.
And it still might.
It might be great, but it doesn't have the cachet of the credential.
It doesn't. So it might not. That's why I didn't bring it up the first time, is it looked like the scope of work and kind of our needs didn't look there. I'm bringing it up now because we're
Desperate stuff.
we don't have anybody who's going for it, so if we change the scope of work a little bit, we have an audience that's very eager to do municipal research.
They always have to pay extra for the seal.
They would jump at the chance to do the project. So we have somebody who would say yes, which might be, which is worth something.
Would more money make a difference to the people who haven't submitted?
I suspect so. I mean, I didn't have anybody come to me and say, we're not doing it because the cost is not there, but I have to imagine that there's some people that didn't write back because they didn't think that we were gonna pay them enough to make it worth their while to submit something.
I've seen studies, I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, this is chunk change for most people, really. They're lucky to get somebody to walk in the door for $8,000, as far as a consultant goes.
Yeah, we got $7,500 for some pro forma filings, as far as I can tell.
Move my attorney.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna go forward with those?
Yeah, so again, right now I'm gonna go forward with reopening under the current model and find out a little bit more about what it would cost to work with a consultant about
Yep.
rewriting it, and find out a little bit about the village's appetite for both, and
And the village's appetite.
keep an eye out for,
Getting a reference from LCPC to,
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good approach.
okay. We happy there? The other thing, I think it was you, Mike, 2 meetings a month?
Right, you know, I mean, a lot of towns, select boards have 2 meetings a month, you know, and then they try to have their agenda so they get out of the meeting around 9 o'clock or no later than 10. I think that if we have 2 meetings a week, we keep track of,
A week?
maybe, a month, I mean, 2 meetings a month, we kind of we have a better sense of really what's going on. We can say that we're only going to go beyond a certain time, because some of these meetings we have, like one we had recently, we didn't get out of here until about midnight. And after, you know, especially people that have to work during the day, and there is a time that people kind of lose their edge as far as processing different things. And I think that if people are a little fresher and the agenda isn't quite as cluttered, that we could get things more accomplished in a more efficient manner.
Brian, would that affect your workload at all?
I think it would make things easier for me.
It would make it easier? Rosemary?
Yeah, a little bit easier, but paying bills, you know,
Yes.
sometimes.
For having sets of orders at
Yep.
2 different times?
Because sometimes they come just a day or 2 after the
Yeah.
meeting, you gotta wait a whole lot.
Yeah, it's always frustrating when you get Tuesday's mail and a stack of bills.
That's gonna happen because there was no mail today.
What's the village do, 2nd and 4th?
Second,
No, just a
We
second.
just do one.
Oh, I thought they had 2 meetings.
not unless there's a budget
Oh,
meeting.
okay.
They have more.
They've been like us where they'll occasionally do a work session,
Okay.
but
If we have a first and third, we won't interfere with them at all.
Would it cut down on work sessions or no for us? Because I'm thinking now this means,
What'd you say?
would it cut down on our work sessions if we,
Yes.
I would expect so. I don't think that we would have to call as many
okay.
work session meetings. We can sometimes divide up their agendas for, when they've got 2 meetings a month, they'll have an informational meeting and an action meeting.
Huh.
You know, so that they'll have one meeting where they, you know, I give you the conflict of interest policy, I give you this, I give you that, we'll go over things, we'll have time to talk about them, and then we meet in 2 weeks to take action on things that we discussed in that first meeting.
That would be a good approach, because we do have complaints sometimes from people that they don't receive enough information. And so if that was done that way, we might get more public input.
Well, I think it makes it a lot easier for the public to participate.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
You know, if somebody can,
I mean, we could still just require Brian to come to 1 meeting, not necessarily,
Brian,
yeah,
Krause.
Krause.
Mhm.
at planning commission, they have maybe the opposite meeting or something like that.
Hmm.
If you guys want to do that.
For my schedule, I'd rather do one meeting a month and later, you know, longer. But that's just my, rather than give up another day, you know. But that's, I'll do whatever is decided.
Do we want to mull it over? Or at 10 o'clock at night, try to decide?
Yeah, here we
Well,
go.
I mean, 10 isn't too bad. I mean, midnight's a different story. You know?
Yeah, I gotta admit, when we went to midnight, I don't know if we were maybe hitting on all cylinders at the end of the night, making the best decisions, we're just making decisions to get out of here.
What about for you, Donna? What would that
If it
mean?
was the first Monday, if that was when you had your other one, I could do that.
Mhm.
What do you think, Donna?
I don't know, I mean, I think, I could see it being a good idea, you having two shorter meetings, I wonder if it would just expand so that you'd have two meetings that are almost as long as they are now. I think things do tend to kind of expand for the amount of time that's
Yeah.
available.
That's true.
I don't have a strong
That
feeling.
was something I was thinking about, but
Yeah.
Well, if the expectation is more that we get out at 9:30, then maybe we could try and,
Right.
And I mean, it could be up to the chair to just limit the agenda and make sure conversations don't go on too long.
not have
Did that.
3 or 4 people from the public, you know, you could limit it to, that's usually what drags it on longer, because they want to talk about their concerns.
Would you take a motion from me, Mr. Chairman, or would you want to?
Do we want to decide tonight?
I don't mind deciding tonight, but I want a consensus. I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
I just want to add that it does take up a lot of time, the public input, but it's
We want
really,
to
it's
encourage
really
the
Oh,
important.
it is, it's very, very important, but, you know, like, Mark's getting into his description of the clock, and, you know, and that's just one example. Everybody else has, what was her name that lives on,
Diana.
Diana. You know, all of the issues with Class 4 highways. I mean, it
Yeah.
does take time when you open it up to
It
somebody
does.
from the public, they,
It seems like when we have a good attendance, we get some good things accomplished. I remember when the rifle range problem, that was a couple of years ago, when we got everybody to show up and the public input. And there was a compromise that was drawn during that meeting. And I think everybody walked away satisfied that their need was met.
Well, yeah, I don't.
Whatever. What's that?
I had a different impression of the result, but.
No, I think they did. I think everything kind of got toned down. I think that from what I remember of it, anyway, I thought it turned out well.
but it was probably an hour-long meeting just on that one.
That's true, but we're always better off if we fill the house. Because we're gonna get more input from people from the town. To push this on, I'll make the motion, we go to 2 meetings a month, first and third.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
And to try not to go beyond 9:30.
I'd like to try it, I'll second it.
Okay, we got a second. Any more discussion?
Would we start this next month?
We'll be meeting
You're
every
gonna
single
have, you're gonna
Monday.
have a meeting, you're gonna have 3
No.
Mondays in a row?
Let's say no for
We've had like
February. I'm not gonna. be
3
here.
already in a
Right.
row.
Yeah.
Start after town meeting.
After.
After town meeting, that
Okay.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? That gives us a month to change our mind. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I agreed to that too, by the way, after town meeting.
Oh, you did? I thought you were gonna agree to your motion. I thought-
I thought I was gonna say no, vote against my motion.
So, if you wanna maybe hit some of the highlights in the budget, that's our last item.
All right.
Right with that, we're out of here. Oh, he's getting out the big sheets of paper.
no.
So here's a new draft for the budget.
We're not discussing this tonight.
Yeah, really?
we're not line by line. I've got,
Well, we're going over it again next week, right?
yeah, I've got just a couple highlights that I want to hit on this.
Okay. Oh, it's a whole packet.
It's also the most recent.
Rosemary, do you want
If
one?
he's got one made up.
I do.
Yep.
Okay.
On the,
It's 10 o'clock.
I'll be quick. No real changes on the revenue side past the changes that we have approved and made. On the expense side, our legal expenses, I upped the current year, end of year estimate by a couple thousand.
Give us a line number, Brian, please.
Yeah, what's the line number?
Line 150. I upped current year, so that's column AB. I have not upped upcoming year. I think we're going to have to add a couple thousand to the upcoming year to finish out the Evergreen Ledge Cemetery situation.
So you think that'll go to 14,000?
Yeah, I think at least 14.
Okay.
Well, hopefully, we don't have to spend that much money.
Well, it wouldn't be the whole thing, but it would.
Right, but I mean,
It would be a noticeable.
that $7,500 seems a little excessive to me for the attorney.
Then I'm down to into the highway, and I want to go to line 351. Construction projects annual, so this is where we cover we had previously covered mud abatement. You'll see that that line is now gone to 15,000. That's because line 356, as your request, I split out mud abatement as an additional line item. So mud abatement is its own line item, and I've devoted 15,000 to that next year. So our annual construction projects are a total of 30,000, but we split the mud abatement out to its own line item. So that reflects the savings that Brian thinks he can realize with a different strategy for mud abatement.
What were we spending? About 25,000?
We were spending closer to 30,000.
30,000.
So, I'm going on the theory, and Duncan has convinced me of this, because the idea had been floated a few meetings ago that we would break the budget up a little bit into different articles that people would vote on. So Duncan's point is that we have legal advice that says from our attorney, Vermont League of Cities and Towns, it says that people at town meeting, the voters can amend line item by line item.
Yes.
Our moderator disagrees. The voters on the floor of town meeting have the option of overriding the moderator, and should they choose, they can take that option. So, essentially, the voters do have the option to override and amend line item by line item. So that's the theory that I'm going under.
Yes.
And I expect at some point someone's going to challenge Dave on it. I would even imagine now that Duncan's brought it up, it could happen this March. I would like to give David the heads up and perhaps the opportunity to discuss it with him ahead of time, but I want to get everybody's thoughts on that.
I feel comfortable talking to him about it. I don't think I would change his position.
I don't think so either.
But as long as he's aware that potentially, and he would respect that too, if the voters
Yes, sir.
overruled him,
Yeah.
then he moves on from there. He wouldn't take it personally. It's a position he holds, he believes, You know, we have legal opinion that would be different, but
And to the best of my knowledge, David is aware that he has a differing opinion
Yeah.
on that.
yeah, because Duncan's talked to him before about it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I feel like that should be overridden, and if the voters did challenge it, that I would support the override. And I just don't want him to be blindsided that the board doesn't support him on his position. So that's why I don't.
No, I think it's fair to
Just
kind
give
of
him a heads up.
reiterate
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
you know, we,
Because if, otherwise I would think, you know, if David was right and we didn't have the legal position saying that he wasn't right, that I would want to design our budget differently so that the voters would have more input.
Well, I'm just thinking that this may be not helpful to Walter. Because when he makes a motion to reduce the budget by 30,000, in everybody's mind, oh yeah, there's 30,000, they can get out of that budget somewhere, there's all kinds of money. But everybody's perception of where the money is probably in a different place. And if Walter made a motion that, you know, I wanna take out 30,000 from the library, all of a sudden, well, no, not from the library, take it from somewhere else, but not the library. It probably would be less successful for him to cut the budget.
Maybe. I mean, I don't want people to change our budget, but I want them to have the ability to. I think they should have
Well,
the right.
of course,
to.
last year was the
Well,
first time they ever did.
They do have the ability.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, they do have the ability, and David recognizes that, you know? It seems to me what we're talking about, are we going to recommend to the village, to our voters, that they, you know, please overturn the moderator's, you know, decision on this thing, you know? And, you know, first level is you have a opinion by one attorney, or by, out of the League of Cities and Towns, that's just an attorney, you know, there.
And our previous attorney, Tara.
Yeah, Dave Barrett also agreed.
Okay, and so, but that's, you know, you
It's
can
not
have
case
two,
law.
and that's not, you know,
I
that's
understand.
not a
Their
Supreme Court
opinions.
case, you know, decision. You know. And Dave Williams is the person that gets to decide right now, and he can be undone, you know. It seems to me that information is out there right now, and we have people who are campaigning to undo that.
To override.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody got anything else?
just a quick note, so the total budget's now increased by 3.8% with the changes I've made, which brings the increase without the light industrial park to 2.2%.
That's where it was before, wasn't it?
It used to be
3/4, like.
yeah, I think it's 2.75
So it's 3.8% total.
total.
Minus the Jewett is 2.2.
Yep.
We've still got an estimated 5,400 cash on hand that'll be applied.
Yep.
Okay.
Our big, the winter salt and sand is the big expense looming over us. We have pretty generous estimates right now for salt and sand, end of year. We're going to go over budget on both of those, but it's hard to say how far over budget. I'm estimating above Brian's estimate for salt and sand. Just, I think Brian's estimate's a little bit conservative. And long-term weather reports I've read don't lend me to be conservative about how the weather's gonna turn out the rest of this year.
So
interestingly, the amount to be raised by taxes is going up about 144,500.
We are contributing much less cash on hand.
That's what I'm getting at. The amount to be reduced to taxes, we went from 138,000 down to 135,000, 130,000 plus. So in that sense, we're not raising the amount to be raised by taxes a lot. It's just we don't have anywhere near the amount of cash on hand.
We've been tightening the budget up over time.
Yeah.
We have a bad winter that's eating up the rest of the cushion, and yeah, that's really what it is that we've been taking that trend to come towards a true budget, and on top of that, we had an expensive winter.
So our powers that be, Brian and Eric, ought to be listening to VTR where they're talking about how towns handle their budgets. Got new with the call-in program on that.
Is that Vermont edition?
Yes,
It is.
it's your lunch break, Eric.
Yeah.
I do listen to Vermont Edition on my lunch break, so,
There it is.
yeah.
How towns are handling town meeting this year?
Budget.
How they're handling their road,
Oh, the road.
their roads, their budget.
Yeah.
Their roads.
I don't think we're as bad off as, didn't the state run out of salt? They've already used up the whole year's supply, something like that?
I don't remember what it was, but the state did have some problem with salt. I mean, but some of that is also the reason why we're paying $12 more a ton. You know, that we all experienced a massive increase in the cost.
Anybody got anything else? No. If not, stand adjourned at 10:10.